Minnesota National Wrestling Duels wants to welcome everybody to the 2021 High School Senior Honor Banquet and the Hall of Fame Region 1 Banquet. The order for tonight is we'll have Cindy Nelson come up and introduce the coaches, and they will introduce their wrestlers, the senior wrestlers. And then Aaron Evers will come up and he will give the Outstanding Wrestler Award for Class A, AA, and AAA. And then after that, Spencer Yo will come up and do the Hall of Fame Region 1 inductees. I want to thank everybody for supporting our virtual t-shirt sales this year. You know, we wanted to do as much as normal as we could we have every year. And that t-shirt sales is huge for our scholarship program. And we just knew we had to do something. We want to thank everybody for supporting that. We were just shy of $6,000. And this past year, we were able to hand out 21 scholarships. So again, next year, we're looking at having even more, a better success with that. So thank you, everybody. With that, I guess we'll have Cindy start with the coaches.
We'll start with Albert Lee tonight.
All right, Cindy, do you want me to just fire away here?
Certainly.
All right. Well, first I want to start by saying thank you to everybody on the committee for putting this on and keeping it going, even if we had to get creative this year. I know it's a lot of work and it's a great event, and I'm thankful that we still are able to have it. And also congratulations to all the Hall of Famers this year as well. So our intent in Albert Lee was to have all of our wrestlers come up to our field house and put this up on the big screen, but I had 4 of my 6 wrestlers that are playing another sport here this spring and are out either playing baseball or have a track commitment, and one of my managers working. So we just figured we would do something off the side, and I'll just quick introduce who our seniors were this year, and then I'll pass the torch on to, I think Austin is after us here. So we had 2 managers this year that were seniors. And by the way, I apologize, a little wind whipped. We just got inside from a softball game, so a little cold and windy out there, and do my best to make this work too. So our 2 managers this year that were seniors were McKenna Jacobs and Delaney Hernandez. McKenna had been a manager for us for 2 years, comes from a great family. She's got 2 little brothers that both wrestle, and hopefully we see them come up through the program as well. Delaney also, she's an older sibling in her family, where her younger brother was a wrestler, or excuse me, her older brother was a wrestler and older sister was a manager for us as well. You probably remember the Hernandez name through Albert Lee Wrestling. And Delaney was a 4-year manager, and it's nice to have consistency year to year in that role. It really takes a lot of pressure off of us coaches to get things done on the day of meets, and they even were dedicated enough to come in and practices at times and help us with little daily tasks as well. So big shout out to those 2 managers for all they've done for the program. We also had 3 what I would call late starters to our program. They came out as juniors or seniors as wrestlers, and I'll start with those guys because they do make a difference in your program. And I think every coach that's on here can recognize that if you get a guy that maybe they're just a good athlete and they come out late, they can fill a hole or really make a difference in your lineup. And it's really appreciated when they can do that. And so the first one we had is Mike Hipper, and he's kind of a fun story. He came out his senior year. He tried wrestling out in junior high, 6th, 7th grade, but he was just a little twig. And boy, did he grow up. He kind of hit a spurt his end of his sophomore year, and I was on him his entire junior year trying to get him to come out. And he committed to the weight room, got really big. And this year was kind of a fun fill-in for us. We used him at 160, 170, and he allowed us to bump around and use him as a sub. And I think he ended up going 500 for us on varsity. And a pretty cool story, a kid that started it, hadn't matured, then grew up and finally hit his stride, and we were able to use him there his senior year. So fun way for him to end his career. The other one would be Trevor Ball. He came out as a junior. Trevor was another, like, as I said, a late starter, but he helped fill our lineup out. And last year, I don't think he won a match on varsity, maybe one. But this year ended up going 8-13. He's actually 6-1 in the Big Nine conference, and I'm hopeful that he'll, we haven't quite firmed that up, but hopefully he'll earn a Big Nine all conference award this year as well. And for a second year kid and going winless last year, it's pretty great improvement for Trevor, and what a fun way for him to finish too. The last one that was kind of a later starter was Tyler Barney. His older brother Connor wrestled for us, and we were always working on Tyler, come out, and we'd see him scrap with the kids in the off season, but he would never commit to the full season. And we got him last year to come out. He was very talented, hard worker. Unfortunately, he didn't see the mat this year. And one of those that you just wish you had more time with. And great kid, and he was a good addition to the team. Just didn't get the most out of him with him starting so late. And then our last three seniors, you'll probably be more familiar with, those in the section 1 here. Tucker Eriksmoen was 6-4 this year, and then he went down with a pretty unfortunate injury. He tore a ligament in his elbow in our Owatonna duel, real unfortunate, pretty sad deal. And I give him props. He kept showing up to practice even though he couldn't wrestle. He kept supporting his teammates even though he couldn't wrestle all the way through the end, and that's what you want to see out of your seniors. And so we're thankful for that. He was really starting to figure things out. I think he ended up placing 3rd in the section last year. This year, I really felt like he was going to make a run at state tournament, and just unfortunately that injury, couldn't wrestle on it, did a brace and kind of ended his season. So the last two, if you've been following youth and high school wrestling in Albert Lea, these guys have been around a long time. First one, Joey Flores. Joey's been wrestling since he was in diapers, I think, and pretty talented kid. Really kind of flatlined last year, and we sat him down at the beginning of this year and just gave him that pep talk for those senior kids. I mean, there's some of you on here listening that it's your last shot at it, and hopefully take advantage of it. And Joey certainly did that this year. Ended up going 14-7 for us. He was out till about the halfway point of the year this year, at the start of the year. But I think he made the best of this season, what he had of it, and finished on a high note, and ended up finishing in the state prelim rounds. With that unique structure this year, it was kind of a fun finish for him at the end of the year too. And then the last one, Caleb Talamontes. And Caleb, he's always been a good wrestler. But this year it was one of those, I think, aha moments for him where he just matured a lot, figured it out, worked really hard. And that was one thing that I don't think he always worked harder when he was younger, but his senior year, his last shot at it, and I think it made a difference. He worked hard and it showed. Ended up going 31-3 on the season. 2 of those losses to the same kid, the Farmington Benz, and 20 pins in those 31 wins. So really helping the team along in that dual schedule this year. And then also over his career, ended up going 142-54. So 142 wins in his career, ended up placing 4th this year at the state tournament. And we're really proud of the way all of our seniors finished this year. And, strong leadership for our young team. And we got a lot to look forward to with that young group, but they learned a lot from these seniors. So that's the rundown of the Albert Lea seniors. I wish they could all be present here with us, but like I said, they all had some other commitments here, those multi-sport athletes, and we want them to be out there enjoying those too. So
We'll move on to Faribault for Austin has no seniors. Oh, we need to roll call. Somebody said yes, so they're not. Okay. Is there anyone on yet for Farmington? How about Northfield? Owatonna? Rochester Century? We'll move on to Rochester Mayo then.
All right, Mark Trimble, head coach of Rochester Mayo. I just want to thank you guys for having this virtual banquet. I really miss being there in person this year. It's always great to catch up with all the great Section 1 people from the other refs, the other coaches that we don't necessarily get to see at the end of the year. Just great catching up with you guys. We missed that this year. We got a great senior class. We had 8 seniors this year. I've coached these seniors anywhere from 13 to 3 years, running our youth program as well. Some we picked up in 6th grade, some just tagged along with their buddies, some were in middle school or high school, but just a great group of guys. They combined for 121 varsity wins this year. I can't be more proud of these guys of how they've grown into the young men they are now. They've definitely changed the culture of our practice room over the years to one of positive energy and a drive for excellence. Especially with this pandemic, they approached it with a great attitude. Hey, we don't know when we're could be shut down, could be the end of the season. So we're going to give it our all every practice. They worked incredibly hard when it was time to work hard, and we had a lot of fun when it was just time to relax. I mean, we could see these guys hanging out after practice, just chatting, you know, half hour, 45 minutes after practice, almost every day. One of the hard parts for them was they were separated out. We had 2 seniors in one pod and the rest of them up in the other pod. I know that was hard for them throughout the year, but just a great group of guys. Their future plans include a huge variety of things: University of Nebraska, University of Minnesota, Arizona State University, RCTC, military, lots of different things. So I'll kind of give you the rundown of them and just a quick little bit about them. We had Rick Kobayashi. He was 23-8 this year, wrestled 132 for us. Qualified to the super sections, would have finished probably 5th, 6th there. Marshall Peters, 138. He's an incredible wrestler. I'll talk a little bit more about him probably later, but 5-time state entrant, 2-time place winner. Just great wrestler, great leadership throughout. Jacob Ostegard, another senior. He's one, he just loved being around wrestling and being around his buddies and just having fun. Never really got much varsity experience. I think he had maybe 6 matches over his whole career on varsity. Just stuck behind tough guys his whole time. Cason Larson, he was 13-15 this year. Really blossomed his senior year, his first year on varsity. Did a great job for us, came up with some huge wins and big duels for us. Ethan Smith was 17-10. This year. He was one that wrestling didn't come easy to him, but it was just finally clicking and really started clicking for him, especially this year. Worked incredibly hard. We knew he'd be gassing his opponents out in that 3rd period. We had another Ethan Vanderwart, who he kind of had to sub in different weights. He was our utility guy when we had to shift the lineup around up top, but he couldn't really crack the lineup most of the year. Probably had about 15 varsity matches his career for him. Sam Allen. Sam was 100% full throttle the whole duel. If you ever watched him wrestle, he's shooting, throwing, rolling, going to his back, trying to roll through. One of those guys that give coaches nightmares, but he came up big for us. 18 wins. Also qualified for super sections. Dedrick Berger. He's been with the program I think he started maybe 5th, 6th grade. He was 23-4 for us. Ended up taking 4th in the super section. Didn't quite make it state this year, or the final 8 of state. But just great season for him. The biggest thing with these guys, their leadership was phenomenal. They were role models for the whole rest of our program. Outstanding people in the classroom, in practice, in the community. I can't say enough great things about these wrestlers. They've done a great job for us, and their mark that they left on our program will last for years and years to go. So really gonna miss them, and pleased to be able to work with all these wrestlers all these years. Thanks.
Thank you. Checking with Ian again, is Rochester John Marshall on? Winona? We'll move on to Class AA. Byron? Cannon Falls doesn't have seniors. KASSON-MANTORVILLE isn't going to make it. La Crescent, are you on? We'll move on to Lake City.
Hey, all right. I'm Austin Poss. I'm one of Doug's assistants. He's in Illinois visiting his daughter, so I figured I'd take it for him. We have a whole lot of seniors, some of which were out for a lot of years and some of which were out for a few years. And we'll start with our managers and our statistician girls. We got Cece Braun. She helped out for about 4 years. We got Sadie, and she helped out for another 4 years. And then we have McKenna Bramer. She helped out for 3 years, and Leah Borschatz, who helped out for 4 years. So with the state tournament being what it was this year, it was really interesting and I got a small taste because we couldn't have managers, and I got a small taste of what they do and doing the Matt Boss and stuff like that, Matt side. And it made me appreciate these stat girls a lot more than I ever have before. And they do a heck of a job, and we were really appreciative to have them as long as we did. Moving on to our seniors, we had Ben Nutt. He wrestled between 182 and 95 for us, and he was a first-year guy. And he can bench like 350 pounds and squat even more, but he just, he needed more time with the mat. But he went out there and got some wins for us occasionally, and he always fought. Jeremy Wynn, he was with the program for 3 years. He was our 195, 220, somewhere in there. He was also a late starter. He went out in 10th grade, and he was a kid where if you have more time with him, you just saw him show these throws that we've never taught and these scrambles that he would get in, and he'd usually end up on his back, but it was things where if you have a little bit more time with him on the mat, he would have been really, really special to watch, and he was fun to watch. Steven Ramirez, he was out for 5 years. He was our 113, 120 pounder in that range, and he's a kid where you never know what's going to happen. He sometimes he'd come out and look great, sometimes he'd come out and look flat. But towards the end of the year, he came out and won some big matches for us, and he was always dependable. He was always there, so he was a good kid to have. The Harkee Brothers, we had these Harkee seniors. They were 170 and 182 twins, and they went out their junior year, and if you were ever around Lake City Wrestling and saw these guys wrestle, you enjoyed it because they didn't know what they were doing, but they got after it, and they threw all these haymakers in practice. It was just fun to watch, and they got after it. We always just paired them together because it was almost like we didn't want our other kids to get hurt because they were just going at each other so hard. It was fun to watch. Dominic Goyle-Creer, he went out in 8th grade. He had 66 career wins, and he was a kid where you just depended on him to win. He would go out there and it might have been 5-3 or something like that, but he was in every match. He always kept every match close, and he was a scrapper. Luke Skifton, this kid has been wrestling since he was in diapers, and he accomplished a lot towards the end of his career. We were excited that this year played out the way it did, and we were able to get a season in because he started the year 7 wins away from 100 career wins, and he actually ended up with 124 wins over his career. His 6th all-time in Lake City. He was a state entrant this year, so he was all state. And he didn't have the best state tournament, but I think the guys he wrestled got 1st and 3rd. So I mean, he made it there, and he was happy with that. And with 124 wins, it was a pretty good career for him. Then we had Osbeen Balthazar. He never really cracked the varsity lineup. He had an older brother that convinced him to go out, and he was out for 3 years, and he was just a fun kid to coach, and you never knew what he was going to do, but he was always fun, always smiling. And then lastly, we got Joe Kozlowski. He was out since we can remember. He was in the elementary program, and he was a 2-time all-conference, 2-time state qualifier. And funny, this year, actually, with the super section setup and everything, he was the 7 seed at super sections, and he placed 6 at state this year. So he had a fun tournament. He knocked out the 2 seed in the super section, who We lost to an overtime in the regular season, and then got a win at state tournament to get him into this 5th place match, and got 6th at state. So that was fun for him. And that's all we have. So thank you guys for putting this on.
Thank you. Do we have anyone from LARP? Pine Island? Plainview, Elgin-Millville? Simley? St. Thomas Academy? Steuarville? Okay, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, you got me? Okay. Steuarville had 3 senior wrestlers and 2 senior stat girls this year. Start by recognizing them. Kyla Stodge, she had been with us for 3 years. Again, unbelievable helping. She was not afraid to do JV or varsity, whichever needed to be done. So appreciate her for that. The second was Chloe Zielinski. She had been with us her whole high school career. Obviously having a brother in wrestling, she got dragged to gyms all over. So she continued that on through her high school. And she was kind of the main one, made sure everything was up to date in track and all that. So we'll be definitely missing her next year. I had 3 seniors this year. First one, Blake Carr. Unfortunately, last couple of years, Blake's been hampered by injuries. Just when we kind of get him up and going, then he gets stumbles and gets injured, but still managed 2-time all-conference selection. I think he was 9-3 on the year this year before going down with injury. So he'll dearly be missed. My next one, Trey Emmerich. Trey had been with us since 8th grade, a couple of time letter winner. Just a great kid to have around. Always brings a smile to everybody's face. Those of you that know Trey or have seen Trey, that's just a guy that loves wrestling. And he'll definitely be missed going into next year. And lastly, my third one, Keegan Zielinski. Again, another guy that's been in and around our lineup for a long time. Both him and Blake are 4- and 5-year letter winners for us also. So they've been in and out of our lineup for a long time. Keegan, 3rd place in the section last year, missed out, placed 4th in the super set, or excuse me, 5th, or would be 5th, 6th in the super section. Just missed out on going to the next step there. So that's our 3 guys, dearly going to be missed, and looking forward to where their things go for them in the future.
It's so stupid.
Thank you. We'll go back to Simley with Will.
Good evening, everybody. I had 5 seniors this year that participated in our sections. Start with Reid Nelson, who was a 3-time state place winner, 3-time section champion. Reid was the captain of our team, and he was he's one of our small guys who helped lead all of our small guys every day and did an outstanding job. Over 100 career wins. He's going on to the University of Arkansas Little Rock, so he'll be continuing to wrestle down there, and we wish him the best of luck. And Reid had a great career at Simley. Our next senior is Ryan Sokol. Ryan Sokol, obviously one of the most dominant wrestlers in the state of Minnesota, 3-time state champ, 5-time place winner. Lots of people don't know that Ryan broke his back in 9th grade, didn't wrestle that year, or he might have won another one. Ryan's just been an outstanding and one of the most dominant wrestlers in the state of Minnesota, as we all witnessed at the state tournament, where he rolled through everybody at the state tournament. And it was really amazing to watch how dominant he is in the state of Minnesota. Ryan's going off to Cornell University and to continue his wrestling there. And we're excited to see what Ryan can do at the Division I level. Our next senior is Kale Berg, 2-time state champion, 1-time runner-up, and 5-time state place winner. Kale is a lot like Ryan in that has been one of the best student athletes that we've ever seen. And both these guys are amazing in the classroom. Obviously, Kale has been a 2-time MWCA academic all-state wrestler and I'm thinking he'll get his second guillotine award here very quickly. Kale is the ultimate student athlete and a student of the sport of wrestling, and he works hard on his craft and his technique and has just been amazing for us. And so Kale Berg has done an outstanding job, and he's off to Harvard University, and we will be excited to see what Kale does at Harvard here the next few years. And I'm just going up by weight classes. My next senior is Caden Short. He's my nephew. Caden is a 4-time state place winner, 5-time state entrant, state champion this year. He finally got it done. He felt a lot of pressure all throughout his career to win and live up to some things and some expectations that were set by his family and my family. And so it was really nice that Caden got it done this year, and very dominant season, went 35-0. And undefeated season is always great for a young man in his senior year, and we're really excited to see what he can do. He's off to the University of Wyoming. Will wrestle for the Cowboys, and we're excited to see him see what he can do at the Division I level in 7-minute matches, because it's always been a strength to wrestle long, hard matches. So we're excited to see what Q can do. And our final senior of the year for Simley was Bennett Tabor. Bennett Tabor completed another undefeated season, 35-0, 15-0 last year, won his last 85 matches of his career. Bennett has been just an outstanding athlete and student athlete as well. Many people know, it's not a secret, Bennett only weighed about 208, 209 all year, wrestled heavyweight for us, so that we could get Kane, Gavin, and Bennett at the top 3 weights. And he did an outstanding job. Lots of people don't know, and it'll go down in history as, he did in the semifinals. We did not know, but just to kind of tell you how tough the guy is, he broke his occipital bone in his face in the semifinal match. We didn't know it at the time, and he didn't know it at the time. Thought he just maybe broke his nose. But obviously his eye swelled shut, and in the semifinal match in the first period, and he wrestled the next 2 matches with that, found a way to get through the semifinal match, and then found a way to come back in the finals and wrestle a great final match and win the state tournament. We're excited to see Bennett. He'll be a Gopher wrestling at the University of Minnesota, and we're excited to see what Bennett can do. Obviously, we will miss these 5 guys. They're amazing leaders, amazing athletes, and they make Simley what we were this year. We were ranked as high as number 2 in the nation, and so without these 5 guys, it just would have never happened. So we say goodbye to a great group of kids.
Thank you. We'll move on to Class A, and we'll circle back in case anybody joins us late. So don't worry, we'll come back. Caledonia, anyone on? We'll move on to Chatfield then.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Mosseth. I'm the head coach in Chatfield. We had 4 seniors this year. I got 3 of them with me. Say hi, boys. They're in my living room down here in Chatfield. First of all, thanks for putting this on. I'm a Section 1 alumni, and I remember being a senior and coming to this banquet, and I really appreciate what you guys do. These 4 guys have been wrestling their whole lives. They were our 4 captains this year, and they're a special group to me because they were 7th graders when I first came to Chatfield. So it's the first group of kids that I've coached all the way through from 7th grade through 12th grade. So gonna remember these guys and miss these guys quite a bit. Tate Carver's not with us. I'm gonna start with Tate Carver. Tate got 3rd at the state prelim event this year. He's been a 2-time captain for us. He went 26-7. 3 Rivers all-conference selection. He finished with 98 wins. Couldn't quite get him to that 100-win mark, but he had an awesome career for us and a great senior. Moving on, I've got Cody Gunther. Cody went 59-47 in his career. He was 19-10 this year. He qualified for the super section event. Cody was a fun wrestler to watch. I remember coaching him. I think he got beat out at the JV conference tournament his 7th grade year, and seeing him come through as a senior and make that state prelim event is pretty special. Cody joined the National Guard. He just graduated high school early. He joined the National Guard and he's going to basic training next week. And we wish him luck with that and thank him for his service. He's also planning to wrestle at RCTC next year. So looking forward to seeing what Cody does next. AJ Carver is another senior. He went 102 and 52 in his career. He was 17-4 this year. AJ was a two-time state qualifier at 220 pounds. He essentially lost in the blood round both years at state. Also wrestled with a torn meniscus both years at state. And so kind of tough break for him. He tore his meniscus right at the beginning of our wrestling season and avoided surgery so he could help our team. He went through a lot of pain and adversity this year to help our team and really appreciate the effort he put in and the finish he made as a senior. So thanks to AJ for that. And then finally, I've got Seth Getzinger. Seth finished 165 and 62 in his career. He's 5th all time in Chatfield school history for wins. Seth he got 3rd in state as a 9th grader. He lost in the blood round as a 10th grader. He was a state runner-up last year at 145, and then he was a Class A state champion this year at 170 pounds. He went undefeated this year at 33-0. He plans to wrestle at Augsburg next year. And Seth is just a great kid. I'm not sure I've coached a more humble or respectful young man. He comes from a great family, and he's just been a model on our team and in the classroom among all his peers at the school. So Seth's a great kid, and nice to see him cap off his career with a perfect season. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Anyone from Doviota? Fillmore Central? We'll go on to you.
Okay. All right, I'm Eric Bankston from Fillmore Central, and we had 5 seniors this year. Our first one was Ryan Kelly. Ryan battled injury to start the season, and as soon as he got rolling, he ended up breaking a bone in his elbow and was out for the rest of the season. Great kid. He worked very hard. We were looking forward to seeing him wrestle to finish out the year, but after high school, he's going to go to Winona Technical College for construction. Our next wrestler is Kale Anderson, one of the Anderson twins. He made 100 wins this year, which was quite an accomplishment for him. Both him and his brother Caden have been very, very tough kids for the last 5 years in our wrestling program. Kale wrestled pretty well this year, made it to the super section. He is going to go into construction after high school. Our next wrestler, Caleb Kuntz, he wrestled his entire career with Fillmore Central and was on varsity for most of that. He struggled at times, but was really coming on strong in this final season, and unfortunately was unable to wrestle at the end of the year because of a skin issue. On to Caden Anderson. Caden Anderson was just a couple wins short of 100 this year, and unfortunately tore his knee and was unable to continue. He did make the state tournament as a 9th grader, and he's an outstanding wrestler and was hoping to challenge some tough kids at the section tournament at the end this year. He's planning on going to Mankato State after high school. And our final wrestler was Devin Trendel. Devin was our upper weight kid. He did a really good job with the younger kids in the room, the upper weights, training them and getting them better every single week. He battled a few injuries throughout the season and was unfortunately sent to quarantine at the end of the season, was unable to continue and finish out the season. He plans to go into the Navy after school. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone from Goodview? GMLOS? St. Charles was going to Triton. Wabasha Kellogg didn't have any seniors. And then Zambroda Mazeppa, and they have 22 people at Ponderosa and can't get connected. Sorry.
He's checking on the landline right now.
And he was gonna try the landline, so if they get in, we'll contact them. Nate from Kenyon-WANAMINGO, are you on?
Yeah, click the mic.
You can go ahead and talk. Yeah, you are good to go.
So we had 8 seniors this year. All of them wrestled varsity. So we have most of them kind of here. You can kind of see it. So they all contributed to us making it to state for the first time as me being head coach. So it was kind of nice to have them. And it was a really fun year. I'm not gonna go as in-depth as everyone else, but it was nice to have these seniors, and they did all a good job.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody on for Westfield? All right, let's circle around. Is there anybody from AAA that wasn't on before that would like to talk? AA. Single A. All right. Please remember when you go off to college that we have those scholarships, and your sophomore year, in between your freshman and sophomore year, please go to our website and apply for those scholarships. Now I'm going to turn it over to Aaron Evers.
All right, I would like to welcome everybody and thank you everybody for being on. So this year we have our outstanding wrestlers for Section A or Section 1, AAA, AA, and Single A. And for Single A, this year we selected Seth Getzinger from Chatfield. Seth had an overall record of 27-0 this year. Overall record of 157-62. He was 3-time state place winner, 2-time state place winner, 3-time entrant. He took 6th at the bi-state, and he was 3 times section champ. He's planning on attending Augsburg and wrestling at Augsburg. And he had a GPA of 3.544. So I don't know, Matt, if Seth wants to say a few words.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to all you guys to put on the section tournament and the state tournament, doing what you guys could do. And say thank you to all my coaches and parents on helping me through all my wrestling career.
Places up. In AA from Simley, we had Ryan Sokol. He was a 5-time entrant, 3-time state champ, and he was also part of Team USA. I don't know if Ryan is on.
Yeah, I'm here. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I just want to say that I'm greatly appreciative to be chosen for this award. And wrestling is something that I've been doing since I was 4 years old, and it's one of the biggest passions of my life. Being a part of Simley Wrestling these last 6 years, I've made countless memories and learned many lessons I can apply in my life. Coach Short and the rest of the coaches have made huge impacts on my life and helped me both in my wrestling and in my everyday life, as well as my family. I want to thank everyone who has helped me, and I can't wait to begin my next chapter at Cornell. Thank you.
And lastly, our AAA was Marshall Peters from Rochester Mail. He had a senior record of 26-7, overall record of 156-47. He's a 5-time qualifier. He placed 4th in 2019. Plays 2-time place winner at the Christmas tournament. He all plans to attend Carleton School of Business, University of Minnesota, sorry. He was nominated for MWCA Academic All-State in 138. And I don't know if Marshall is on. Marshall?
Yep, I'm here. Anybody hear me? All right. I just want to give a quick shout out to, or thanks to all my coaches, teammates, and parents, whoever helped me throughout my wrestling career. Big shout out to MSHSL for allowing us to have a season under the restrictions that were placed. And that's about all I got to say.
And we will have to work with the coaches in order to get you your awards or get a hold of you somehow. So we'll try that, get them to you here in the next couple of weeks.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the next part, but first I want to thank our Minnesota National Wrestling Dual Committee, current president, Rick Tees. He's had a lot of challenges thrown at him this year, and I give him kudos to come on with this virtual way of doing things. And Brian Mix is the vice president and our IT guy, so he's the one that, again, without this technology and stuff, we wouldn't be able to do it. Cindy Nelson's our secretary, and Mike Bush is here this evening, and Aaron Evers, and our head official, Bill Olson. So we're all here at Charlie's Eatery as a small group, so we can put this on for everybody. And I just want to wish all the seniors congratulations and wish them luck for the next chapter in their life as they go on off to high school, to college, or the service, or wherever they do. And just remember to give back to the sport of wrestling in any way you can. If you come back to your local town and do some coaching, if you want to start looking at maybe doing some refereeing later on in your life, definitely look at that. You know, the sport of wrestling has helped all of us over many, many years, and the reason we put this banquet on is to honor you seniors, and hopefully you can give back some year. With that, I'm going to have Spencer come up and we'll start the outstanding Hall of Fame banquet.
Yes, welcome tonight. We have an outstanding group of 9 individuals going into the Hall of Fame tonight. And Cindy, could you bring that jacket up here for me? Our first honoree going in tonight will be Mike Buringa, and he'll have a longtime coaching friend of his will present him. Just a few words on Mike. Bill Schultz will present him, but anyway, Mike could qualify in all 3 categories. Tremendous athlete at Plainview High School, state champion, 3rd in the state, all that, 132 career wins. And then as far as a coach, he took KASSON-MANTORVILLE to 4th in the state, also coached his alma mater, Plainview, when he was in college at Winona State. You know, turned everything to gold. So, and the third one is he's one of the outstanding contributors I've ever met. And if you people, you know, he run the national high school, Team Minnesota at the national high school tournament for 10 years straight. They won the national championship in 1997. And he was the head coach. He was the CEO. Of course, Jill did some paperwork for him, his wife. So, anyway, and also he was charge of the laundry down there. So, and I had one of his good friends, one of his co-lieutenants there, and you'll hear from Bill Kenny later in the program here as he's presenting Brad. But anyway, Roger Knudsen and Bill Kenny were his co-lieutenants in that. Roger said to send you a big shout out tonight from Dyersville, Iowa. So I'll have Bill Schultz take over, and I know he'll do a much better job than I did. Congratulations, Mike.
All right. Bill was not able to make it here for us tonight. He had another commitment that popped up, so we're going to go ahead and go without him. And I just really want to tell everyone out there how pleased I am to be a part of this tonight. It just seems 1984 was so long ago. In fact, it was 200 pounds ago, if I want to go ahead by weight instead of years. When you're a little wrestler in high school and you turn around and grow up to be a pretty good sized man, you find that there's different ways to measure the passing of time. So I'd like to begin by thanking the committee. There's some awfully good people on that committee. I know the Nelsons have worked extremely hard through all aspects of wrestling. When I was at Cason-MANTORVILLE, they were ran our youth wrestling program at that time, and just did a fantastic job. And Dean, of course, is still officiating. I know they're a big part of the Clash. And of course, the voice of wrestling, Spencer Yo. Everybody knows Spencer. And Spencer was one of those key cogs in that national championship and the forming of Team Minnesota. So, and the other people on the committee, again, I just want to thank you for your endless dedication to that. Next, I would like to congratulate all of the Hall of Fame inductees tonight. They're, I'm sure, as honored as I am to be here. I guess, first of all, I've got a personal contact with a few of them. Jason RHOTEN was in the junior high wrestling program when I was the head coach at Cason-MANTORVILLE, and did a wonderful job as a young wrestler, and of course blossomed into a national championship in Mankato. Also, Tom THEEDE, if you were a member of the wrestling in the 1980s, you remember the THEEDE Ole matches, and every weekend they battled back and forth to see who was going to be out on top. And of course, Tom won the one that mattered the most, the state championship. So those connections have been very dear to me. And then you get into the official rankings with Rod Hosley, one of the best officials of his era as a coach. All you could ask for is consistency, and Rod was one of those guys that he always gave you his best performance out there. He never allowed himself to be a part of the match. I always felt the best officials were the ones that didn't even get noticed, and he was Mr. Consistent all the time, and just did an excellent job. So congratulations to you. Next, I'd like to talk about my teammates. Judd Stuke was my practice partner, and Judd was just an absolute grinder. He and I drilled and drilled and drilled to perfect our skills. And of course, he also was a state entrant for Plainview back in the day. And his dad, Jim, was our chiropractor, our team chiropractor. And I know that Jim gave me hundreds of adjustments for free. So I can't thank the Stuke family enough. And I just couldn't do justice without including them in our events tonight. Then probably the fiercest competitor that Section 1 has ever seen. And I think some of you that still follow wrestling see that in the assistant coach from Zumbro to Mazeppa, Mark Creer. Mark was a year older than I, but we were both on the smaller side when we started our careers. And I remember the worst thing that I could possibly do was to score a point on Mark in practice, because he'd make me pay for it for the next hour and a half. But again, his fierce competitiveness helped make me better. I like to think I had a little part in helping him to get better in his younger years. And most importantly, his 3 state titles was a model for all of us in small town Plainview, that state champions can be won. at a smaller school. He was our first state champion, and there's quite a few to follow. Then I'd like to mention the Wolfs and the Miller families. These are the toughest of tough farm kids. I think kids today have no idea how much work went into being able to participate in being a farmer back in those days. They didn't have time to get sick. They milked the cows before school, or after practice, and never once complained. And I don't think they ever missed any practices. So those were the kind of guys that I was able to surround myself with in high school. And that's one of the reasons why I can proudly say that through the entire 1980s, the entire time that I wrestled varsity, we never lost a regular season dual meet. The only time we lost was in the postseason. So we had a hefty winning streak along the way, and it was because of the continued toughness that we were able to gather in our wrestling room. And then, of course, leadership. Our head coach, Jim Campbell, who was also a member of this Hall of Fame. Most athletes will never experience the bond between a coach and a wrestler that we were able to experience with Mr. Campbell. He was a soft-spoken English teacher, and oftentimes would use big words. I'll never forget when he'd say, if this individual has the audacity to shoot in on you, you got to make him pay for it. So it took me a few years to know what audacity meant, but I know it had something to do with me being as mean as I could if somebody dared touch my legs. His pre-match speech would always include the word pride, and that the P on our uniform stood for Plainview Pride, which is a special kind of pride that I still carry with me today. I would have gone through a brick wall for him, as I know all of us would have, and I'm sure that he would have done the same for us as well. So thank you, Coach Campbell, for being a big part of my life. They say it takes a community to raise a child, and no doubt Plainview was that for me. Never before could I ever imagine that it would take so many people to be influences in my life. I guess the first person, Jarvis Anderson, my high school baseball coach, but he was also the guy that taught me who Jesus Christ was, and the important effect that he would have in my life in the years to come. And then you got Tom and Karen Anderson, who opened up their house to me. Tom was my ag teacher, and they quickly became mom and dad for me. I know Karen made it very difficult to make weight sometimes because she was such a great cook. My senior year, my mom was in the hospital more than she was at home, and I spent many, many nights eating supper there and sometimes spending the night. So they were always there for me and always made sure that all my needs were met as I lived in the house by myself for most of that year. The next person I'd like to talk about is Mike Hamilton. Mike was my first coach. He was the elementary phy ed teacher, and he gave all of us the opportunity to learn and practice wrestling at noon hour. He'd give up his lunch every day, and we'd go up in the winter, and then we'd go up into the wrestling room, and he'd allow us to practice. He'd show us the moves and spend endless Saturdays going to youth tournaments and leading us around. Of course, back then, a youth tournament, you traveled hundreds of miles, not just down the road. And again, a real good friend and a real mentor for me from young on. Then there was Frank and Sarah Olson. We lost Frank a couple of years ago to an unfortunate brain aneurysm, but he and his wife Sarah were like big brothers and big sisters for me. Many nights Frank would drive me over to Rochester so that I could get in a spa or a whirlpool or something to help make weight, because back then I was, as we used to say, sucked dry. So I needed all the extra help that I could, and Frank was always there to encourage me, but he was also there to transport me. And as we gather our celebration tonight, I'll remember Frank, and I hope that his wife Sarah is able to make it as well. And of course, Bill Schultz, the gentleman that was going to be my presenter tonight. He was kind of like my brother from another mother. He and I started coaching together at Plainview. I was 19, he was 20. They're both students at Winona State University. And he's been there for me through thick and thin every step of the way. So I want to thank you, Bill. Then when I got into coaching, I started at Plainview, ended up at Cason-MANTORVILLE for my first teaching coaching job. And I ran into a young man by the name of John Buchanan. And John was probably the most prepared coach that I've ever coached with. He enjoyed stats. He was a master of scouting and the master of matchups. And he was a big part of the reason why we went to the state tournament in 1987. Then I took a few years off to become an athletic director, and life was good. But I always had a yearning to get back on the mat, and I had the opportunity to do that at Lewiston-ALTURA, Rushford Peterson. And Mike Honk and Ben Daly and Tim Teakouts were coaching there at that time, and they wanted this guy to come in and roll around with the kids, which I wasn't a guy for, but I definitely enjoyed showing technique and being a part of it. And I got into the coaching realm there, and I think we complemented each other well. I was a very serious individual on the mat as both a coach and a wrestler, and these guys were more lighthearted. So they were a little bit easier on the kids than I was, but in the end, I think we complemented each other very, very well. I can't forget the memories that I had as a coach that probably outnumber those of an athlete, but guys like Mike Mazzatelli and Frank Murphy and Doug Veit and Joel Viss and Ron Sanders and Bill Kinney and Roger Knutson. Each one of those guys had a tremendous impact on me, both when I was coaching and when I was wrestling. I just got to tell a quick story because Mike Mazzatelli was one of those guys that he was a pretty outspoken guy, and I was kind of young and kind of outspoken, but we're sitting at the Stewartville tournament, and this guy by the name of Pat Lund, who was at that time just starting with KTTC, and I said, "Gal, that Pat Lund, what do you think of him? I think he's a little bit arrogant." And Mazzatelli said, hey Pat, come on over here." I had never met the guy really. I only see him on TV. So Maz calls him over and says, "Hey Pat, this is Mike Buringa. He says you're arrogant." So it was kind of an embarrassing moment, but I think that was a good way to me to get christened in that, you know what you say here, you need to show a little respect, young man. And Maz taught me that, and I later become good friends with Pat Lund, and I have a few more words for him in a little bit. Another coach that was just tremendous in the area was Bill Sutter. If I didn't wrestle for Plainview, it's pretty tough to argue what good he has accomplished for many, many years, but especially during that time period. And of course, his longtime assistant, Eddie Pohl. So you had Pohl and Sutter were kind of like the Batman and Robin of Section 1 wrestling. Then of course, I saved the best for last, and of course, that's my family. Been married 25 years to my wife, Jill, and you couldn't ask for a better person to love you unconditionally. Living with Mike Buringa is absolutely a challenge. And for somehow she was able to get through it. She had strong family support. I just love her to death, and she gave us 4 of the most wonderful children in the world. And our oldest daughter, Laura, so proud of her. She just graduated from respiratory therapy, working at Mayo. She's 21 years old and makes more than her father does after 30 years of teaching, 40 years of teaching soon, and a master's degree. So she starts out with that and owns her own house. So thank you, Laura, for all your love and support. My son, Mark, it was a tremendous feeling to watch him wrestle through his high school career. He was a 5-time state place winner, placing 5th, 3rd, 2nd, and was a champion his senior year after fracturing his leg in football. Had a half a wrestling season, was able to put it all together and won the tournament for a feeling I'll never forget. My daughter Emily right now is playing softball. In fact, they won their 2 games today. She's playing softball for the University of North Dakota State University. The Bison won both their games today, and she's starting in the outfield as a freshman. So awfully proud of her. And then of course our youngest one, Grace. Grace is a sophomore, and she's a catcher on the softball team. Softball and baseball is always big in our family, and Grace is just following steps with everybody else as being a good student and in representing the Saints very, very well. So in closing, I just really want to make a couple comments about some people that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame that may have fallen through the cracks. Again, I'm not sure, but I had mentioned the name Pat Lund before. Back in the 80s, one thing that separated wrestling from it does today, the changes that have gone on, of course, on the mat are, out of your control. But one thing that really drives me crazy is the coverage that we used to get in the 80s that we don't get now. As a wrestling coach, if you wanted something, you had to call, you have to type it up yourself now and send it in. And back in the 80s, the coverage that we got was just phenomenal. Pat put wrestling high on his requirements or his expectations. And I remember getting teammates together and waiting for the prep sport extra to see, kind of stay up on top of everything. And they just had great coverage. And another one is the Post Bulletin, Jim Tealman. Jim really deserves to be in this Hall of Fame. I hope that's a name that kind of brings to the forefront because he was a fantastic writer. Someone that just really loved wrestling and followed it through and through. I was really lucky because he loved Mark Creer, and he was always interviewing Creer, and I always got the scraps. So whenever Creer was done talking, I always got a word or two in, and I appreciated that coverage. And but that's one thing that the media, I tell you, just it brought people to the gym, and we wrestled behind packed crowds. It's not even the same comparison as it is right now, and I'm just so blessed to have that. So in closing, I just want to thank everyone for that opportunity. Hopefully I didn't get too long-winded here, but you get one opportunity to kind of refresh your memory on all the wonderful things that wrestling brought. And I just thank all of you for that opportunity tonight. Thank you.
Next honoree probably make the statement as the greatest wrestler to ever come out of Boston High School. Back in my day when we had one class, I remember Dave Simonson, who did both sports at Minnesota. Not sure if he's an All-American for Wally up there or not, but he was a state champion out of, maybe he was a state runner-up, Mike Steidel that year too. But excellent wrestler, but without a doubt, Brad Fisher, third to eighth grader in the history of the state of Minnesota to become a state champion. He's two-time champion, four-time place winner, and went on to college and did outstanding. Had 3 All-American honors at Augsburg University now, and he's coached there. They've won a number of national titles. I think they won 4 Division III titles. So he's basically did it all. Just outstanding. And if you've ever met him, he's an even better person. Special education teacher and cross-country coach up at Fridley High School. But I know his presenter here is going to have a lot of great things to say. And because he coached it firsthand, he was right in the trenches with him. So we'll welcome Bill Kinney, the coach from Boston. And I want you to say a few prayers for Bill because he's fighting a tough health battle too, but we know he's going to prevail like he did on the mat coaching. So Bill, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Spencer. It's my great pleasure and privilege to present to you Brad Fisher. Brad Fisher set the standard for Austin wrestling in our modern era, at least the last 25 years. When he graduated, he had nearly all of the records at Austin High School. He'd won 2 state championships. He had 4 state placements. He was a high school All-American. And every young wrestler in Austin knew who he was and wanted to be just like him. Now I could go on and tell you all about his wrestling accomplishments. And, you know, he had the most takedowns at the time and the most pins on our team. That would leave out the best things, I think, about Brad Fisher. More importantly, in my opinion, there are other things that I feel should be highlighted about him. Brad was an outstanding student. He was a true student athlete. He earned state and national academic recognition. Brad was a fierce competitor on the mat, and yet he was a true gentleman at all times. He was one of the kindest kids I've ever worked with. He was a great sportsman in matches, whether he lost, whether he won. There was not much difference in the response. He was always a really great sportsman. Brad sought out every opportunity to give back to our program, whether it be to come and work with younger kids, work his partners every year in practice made gains that most of the other kids on the team didn't make. He just has been a solid and consistent contributor to the sport of wrestling. He was a leader in every group that he was a part of. He brought out the best in everybody. He brought the best in the coaching staff. He brought out the best in his teammates. He's carried those wonderful traits, I believe, into adulthood. He's become an outstanding husband and father, teacher, coach, mentor, and student advocate. These are all the reasons that I'm so glad that young wrestlers, even today, know who Brad Fisher is and want to be just like him. It was a great honor for me and a true privilege to be Brad's coach for his last 3 years in high school. I want to congratulate and present to you Brad Fisher, 2021 Section 1 Wrestling Hall of Fame inductee. Congrats.
All right. Thank you, Bill. That was great. Well, I want to thank everybody that had a hand in producing this event tonight. In the times that we're in right now is not easy to get something organized of this magnitude. So thank you. And especially Spencer. Thank you. I've known you back since high school. I think when I was trying to make my decision on where I wanted to wrestle, I believe I fielded a few phone calls from you. You were recruiting. It might have been Moorhead State at the time. But thank you for everything that you've done over all these years. Where to start with something like this? I want to say, the very first thing is, I'm here because of some of the results that were favorable, that I performed well. But I think that is a product of more of just the people that I've been around in my life. I'm so humble and so grateful to have had the journey that I've had and the journey that I'm on, because my journey has not ended. My competition years might be done as far as wrestling goes. Officially, I still put on the shoes and I still wrestle. I did this past season every day at Augsburg University, trying to help make my wrestlers better. Yeah, so to start out, I'd like to thank my mom and my dad, who passed in August of 2019. They have been such a huge support for me all the way along. They made sure I had everything that I needed as for equipment, emotional support, and I was a kid that loved every sport. If there was a sport and there was an opportunity, I was going to play it. I think I even played basketball and wrestled in elementary school until I had to just pick one, and then I picked wrestling. I was the second shortest kid in my grade, and things sounds like it turned out all right. Now, early on, kind of wondered, I had some really good success, in 8th grade, winning that state championship. Hadn't been done in like 30 years, something like that. And that was a product of the people that I got to be around. And some of those people are involved in this tonight. Let's see, my earliest, how I started wrestling, from my best memory is I watched, so I'm from Austin, pretty close to the Iowa border, and I didn't have cable growing up, but we had Iowa Public Television, and that's going to come up a couple times in this talk. I used to watch the Iowa Hawkeyes on Iowa Public Television, and I loved what I was seeing. So it was, late 80s through the early 90s, mid 90s, and Iowa was a powerhouse back then. That really got me interested. Just wrestled one day a week in preschool. My sister was my first practice partner. So I'm going to thank her for putting up with doing that for that first year. That was great. I got to thank my brother, because even though he was 4 years older than me, and he was a swimmer, that didn't give him a free pass. And he and I scrapped quite a bit in the living room carpet. And we had a few, well, there were more times than I'd like to admit where we would flex our muscles in front of the mirror to see who had bigger muscles. So I do thank my family, because they've been a huge support for me all the way along. Unconditional support. Can't thank them enough. Early on, a little bit of luck, a little bit of circumstance, but it was at the Owatonna Open when I was in 3rd grade. And it was a loss that I had that kind of changed the trajectory of my wrestling career. It was a loss to Pat Hardy. And my dad was a social guy, and he started talking to Patrick Hardy's dad. And before you know it, I was showing up at, back then it was Hardy O'Connor Mechanical, but now it's Hardy Mechanical. I'd show up there and I'd drive home with Patrick's mom, Renee, and play with Patrick at his house until his dad got home, and then we'd go in the basement and we'd wrestle. So I got to thank those guys a lot. And along with that, that kind of brought me into wrestling. At the time, Austin didn't have a freestyle program. And I loved wrestling ever since I started it. Loved everything about it. Couldn't get enough of it. And so through the Hardys, I started wrestling with the Hayfield High Flyers. And I know, super honored to be inducted with the people that I'm being inducted with tonight. Chris Steele being one of them. I really got to thank his parents, John and Marge Steele, because they hired me, me and Patrick, to pick rock in their fields. We heard a little bit earlier from someone talking about farmer strength. Well, I was young and I was just learning about work ethic back then, but they, hiring me and Patrick to work in their fields and having Chris drive the tractor while Patrick and I were running off, grabbing rocks and bringing them back, and doing that for many hours during the day. That helped instill, work ethic in me, which I prize and I value. It was just part of my journey that I really loved. And the rest of the Hayfield High Flyer program really kind of brought me in. So not just the Steeles, but my first coaches there, Kurt Olson, Richie Douglas, the Pike family, Chad, Brad, and Thad Pike, Nick Severson, Adam Tronson, and then later on, Jim Richardson. Some people know him as the Unit. This was before he was the Unit. Jim was a big influence for as far as Greco goes for me. In high school, Jim, before regional training sites were a popular thing, he was running a regional training site at Rochester Community and Technical College, and that was before they had a new campus. So a few of us from Austin, we would drive over, and there were kids that drove from other places. We would all meet at RCTC, and we'd have to roll out the wrestling mats, have a practice, and roll up the wrestling mats again on the gym floor. But RCTC's come a long way since then. I've had the benefit of being able to work with their program a little bit and wrestle against them, because Augsburg competes against them. Great people down there. So thank you to the Hayfield High Flyer program, because that was a big part of my development and helped me gain the confidence and the skills that helped me achieve some real high-level success early on in my career. Also want to thank, Bill Kinney, my high school wrestling coach. I had talked about the Iowa Public Television. Well, Bill Kinney came to Austin my 10th grade year. I'd already had some success. Well, it turns out 10th grade year was a tough year as far as the final result went. I lost to Chad Erickson, who ended up being a 4-time state champion for Apple Valley, and Mr. Minnesota, and a couple-time All-American for the Gophers. And then I lost again in the Wrestlebacks, and I didn't place in the tournament. So that was tough. But as Spencer said, Bill Kinney was in the trenches with us wrestlers. And that is something that he won't take any credit, and he never has, for my success. But I'm an observant person, and he had a huge impact on me. He was a worker, and I knew that. And he cared deeply about his team and his wrestlers. And I knew that. And I could see all of that. And he was doing that, if we were running, he was running with us. If we were doing other things, he was doing things with us. And that had a lasting impact on me. And that definitely influences how I approach my own athletes. In cross country, we're running, I'm running, unless it's something that I have to not run to organize. If we're strength training, I'm strength training with them. If we're stretching, I'm stretching with them. If we're doing core strengthening, I do that with them. And same thing in the wrestling room too. And that work ethic, I think is important. Important in life, not just in wrestling, but anywhere in life. A big compliment to Bill. He doesn't know about this yet. I haven't told him this, but I got my VHS tapes converted to DVD recently, and I went and rewatched a wrestling match that was published on Iowa Public Television. Dan Gable and Tim Johnson were the commentators. And so I was a sophomore. This was 1999. It was down in Waverly, Iowa, and it was classic Augsburg battle rivalry. it was exciting. They panned over to the crowd a whole bunch. But when I was up wrestling, Dan Gable had mentioned, he said, you know, Austin just brought a team down to my camp, and you know, and they were working hard, and their coach was out there working with them. And he really said, you know, that coach of theirs is a great representation of our sport. And I couldn't agree more. And that's coming from Dan Gable, one of the best, one of the greats. So to Bill Kinney, thank you so much for being part of my journey and helping influence me and how I approach when I'm coaching my athletes. I'll throw a quick shout out to my high school teammates, Scott and Brett Delaney, Randy and Tracy Smith, Dan Armagast, Jason Solberg. Those guys weren't just my teammates, they were my friends, right? So one of the things, you know, to build a successful program, and this goes back to the Hayfield High Flyer days too, is, man, if you can get a whole bunch of really good people that like each other, that are friends, that do things together and get their parents together, and everybody's working together, everyone does better. And I've been very lucky and very grateful to have a lot of that happen in my life, and it keeps repeating. The cycle repeats. The wrestling world is a small world. Even seeing some of the people on here, you know, Danita Flodine is getting inducted tonight. Well, she was working pairings at tournaments when I was wrestling, so she's been doing it for a really long time. Had a couple sons that wrestled at Augsburg. I was on staff. It was my first year, her son Seth's senior year. And then I was fortunate enough to be her other son, Spencer's individual coach. So that was pretty cool. I see Jay Wheaton's getting inducted, and I wrestled with his brother Kyle Wheaton at Augsburg. So just a lot of great people in wrestling that keep coming back around, and the wrestling community is so small. And I'm so grateful and honored to be part of it. Once I got to Augsburg, huge part of my life, and another guy that has left us too soon. He passed also in August, same month as my father. Donnie Wickman was my individual coach. I really want, thank him for all that he believed in me, invested in me. But then also Jeff Swenson and Scott Worley were a couple of huge influences at Augsburg during that time. And then a couple of my wrestlers that I and really good friends that I made at Augsburg: Nick Lewandowski, Josh Clausen, Kevin Rasmussen, Brian Goodnature, and there's many, many more that I haven't been able to say. So I do want to once again say I'm very humbled and grateful for this opportunity to be honored today for the accomplishments that I've had in the past. But I'm on this journey, and my journey is still happening. I'm hoping to continue to help make a positive influence in the lives of the students that I teach, the athletes that I coach, not only in cross country and wrestling. And I look forward to coaching the wrestler from Chatfield that I heard is coming to Augsburg next year. So I'm excited for that. But once again, thank you everybody for this great honor. And this great event for tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett. Our next honoree is a Meritorious Service Award, and the committee has selected an outstanding person that's been at the forefront for 20, maybe 30 years, ever since I can remember. Whether it's at Fargo or the state tournament, Las Vegas there, and has worked hand in hand at all the tables as one of the top volunteers in the nation and state as well. At this time, we're going to honor Danita Flodine, and her presenter will be husband, Coach Dudley Flodine. So give them a round of applause.
I consider it an honor to be the presenter for Danita Flodine. I've known Danita for almost 40 years, and that's a long time because she's only 28, at least in her mind. Danita has always been what's best for the kids, her kids and her grandkids, but also all the kids. Danita is a take charge person, one who was in it for the kids. When we would go to the open tournaments, they would announce that they need volunteers, so she would help out with the tournaments, and within a short time, she would be helping running the tournaments, and our kids would have to wait around for the tournament to get done and everything to get put away so that they could leave. Danita looks at wrestling like a business where the athletes and their parents are the customers and wrestling is the product. She says that if they have a positive experience with the tournaments and with wrestling, they're likely to come back and thus grow our sport. Danita is always promoting wrestling, and that's not always a good situation when she's trying to recruit people that work at the pizza place here. The reason Danita got involved in wrestling was for our kids, but then it ended up being all the kids. Danita has helped out at all levels of wrestling, from open tournaments to high school invitationals, Min USA open tournaments, Min USA state tournaments, where she was pair of the year for Minnesota USA Wrestling, many USA regional, national, and USA cadet national and junior national tournaments. 20 plus years of Minnesota high school section tournaments and the Minnesota State high school tournaments, NCAA dual meet national tournaments, NCAA Division III national tournaments, many senior and veteran national tournaments, and the U.S. Olympic trials. It is my pleasure to introduce 2021 MCC Region 1 Hall of Fame inductee Danita Flodine.
Thank you. Do you have your shut off? Thank you to the committee and to all for all the work that you do for putting on this event every year. The extra work you had to do to change it up and make this still happen this year. Very appreciated. Thanks for those that participated in giving me this award. Thanks, Dudley, for the very nice introduction. And congratulations to all the other award winners. I got my start into the wrestling sport because of Dudley. He was actually an old timer wrestler at the time. And then our boys wrestled. Our oldest started when he was, I think, around 5 or 6. And so that's over 30 years since he's been in wrestling. At tournaments, they would be calling out for workers. So I thought, why not help out? I soon discovered that I had the best seat in the house. So I thought, I loved working the tables. But once my boys started wrestling in freestyle and Greco, then I got recruited to help with pairing. At that time, we did everything by hand. And so my only opportunity then to work tables was the high school tournaments or the collegiate level tournaments. I remember one year at sections back when we had towel tappers at that time. Things have progressed now. They don't need them. They have little wristbands that tell them when the time is up. But we had towel tappers, and Mr. Ebert, who is one of my mentors, he said, he worked the tables with me, and he said, I just realized why we have so many towel tappers at our table. And I said, why is that? And he says, because you bring so much candy to the table. And I'm like, well, at least we're never short on workers. I started at the high school state tournament. I think it was Lane Otterness who said, Danita, they need help up at the state tournament. So you should help out. And it was before my oldest got into the state tournament. So I volunteered. I filled out the paperwork, and I think it was Dr. Bethke or something like that that ran the table workers. But anyways, I received my notice. It said, okay, all the officials need to wear a black and white striped shirt and black pants, and table workers, you need to be there at certain times. And so I show up that day and for my shift, and the person, where's your striped shirt and black pants? I'm like, no, I'm just a table worker. He's like, yeah, all officials need to have a striped shirt and black pants, but I'm not an official. I'm just a table worker. And they're like, no, that's an official. So I quick ran to Mr. Ebert. I'm like, what do I do? So he took his shirt off and gave it to me, and I wore that shirt for my next session. And I remember the official I was working with, the other table worker, he's like, well, what region or section do you officiate in? I'm like, no, I'm not an official. I'm a table worker. He's like, no, you got to be an official here. I go, no, I'm a table worker. So I went back to Dr. Bethany and I said, hey, you know, I'm just a table worker, right? He goes, what do you mean? And so I was telling him what the other table worker was asking, where do I actually officiate? He goes, you have a striped shirt on, don't you? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, that's official enough for me. And every year I was asked back to the state tournament. So I thought that was pretty good. Being the USA membership person for so many years has given me the opportunity to get to know wrestlers and their parents and develop many, many friendships. When I first started at the national tournament in Fargo, everything was done by hand, as well as even updating the wall charts for the wrestlers so that they knew who they wrestled the next round. We would get assigned different activities to do at that time, and I was always excited when I got assigned to do the updating wall charts, and everybody else hated it, and they couldn't understand why do you even like that, Danita? And I told them, I said, this is the most feel-good job we have here. And they're like, what are you talking about? I said, when I go down there, those wrestlers are pushing everybody out of the way. Get out of her way, get out of her way. And they're helping me post the things. They're also very nice because they wanted to see that chart and see who they wrestled next. So it was great. I did have to put up with some smells, but I was kind of used to that with wrestlers anyways. But so that was always a fun thing for me to do. I loved working up at the Fargo at the wrestling tournament. Dudley made the comment about me always promoting the sport, and I do try to do that. I remember one day I was talking with this mom, trying to get her kids out for wrestling, and she made a comment to me that I'm not doing that. Wrestling is an all-day event. You spend all day Saturday at the tournament, and that's not for me. And I asked her what was more better way to spend with your kids. You get to have that quality time on the drive there. You're cheering them on and supporting them when they're wrestling. You're congratulating them or consoling them when the match, at the end of the match, and you have the ride home. If my kids didn't wrestle, I would probably have the cleanest house in the country. My kids would be down playing with their friends. My house would be clean, but they'd be all grown and graduated and off on their own. And I wouldn't have the memories that I have from the wrestling, from all the ups and downs of the matches, for the train rides out to North Dakota, to different tournaments, to the Vegas tournaments that we've had. All the fun, all the memories that I have made, I would have missed out on that, and I wouldn't have done that. I know Dudley says that I do this for the kids, but really I think I do this for myself. It gave me the memories. It gave me the time with my kids. It gave me all these friendships. So I kind of feel like I probably do it more for myself. My boys asked me once, why do I keep volunteering with the wrestling since they're no longer involved? And my answer to them was, because this is a way to try and help keep the costs of wrestling down, the sport, keep it a lower cost for families. And this is where my friends are at. This is when I get to see them. I've met so many people and have developed so many friendships that I really feel like wrestling is a family thing. My boys have many, many friendships they're total competitive on the mat, and off the mat, they're the best of friends. And I just think that is so awesome about the wrestling sport. So I just want to thank you again for this great honor. Thanks to my boys for loving the sport of wrestling, that allowed me to be part of it, for Dudley to be being involved in it and being such a great role model and mentor for our boys. It's just been an awesome opportunity. Thank you.
Our next honoree is going to be our official, who comes highly recommended from the Southern Minnesota Wrestling Officials Association. And he was an official for 28 years, Rod Hosley. And also Rod, you know, not only being a wrestling coach for 10 years at Rushford Peterson, he also coached the girls and boys track team. And he had state titles with both of them, once as a head coach and once as an assistant there with the girls. So outstanding coach as well, as a longtime official. Minnesota, he worked, I think, one Minnesota state tournament, but he worked over Wisconsin in a number of state tournaments. He worked the Winona High tournament for 28 years. And he also worked the class tournament here for a number of years with the guys. So at this time, we'll turn it over to his presenter, longtime highly successful Winona High coach, Bill Schmidt. Congratulations to Rod Hosley, and thanks, Bill, for presenting.
All right, hello, everybody. I didn't get a chance to talk to Spence to find out if this was a roast or exactly how we're going to approach this. So, but I want to take this opportunity to congratulate all of our Region 1 inductees. It's a really strong field this year, and it says a lot about the quality of wrestling and coaches and officials in southeastern Minnesota. Our wrestlers and teams have always represented this part of the state really well up at the state tournament, so that's pretty cool. Rod Hosley was an outstanding high school wrestler, placed in state. Spence kind of alluded to that. He was also a very good wrestler at Winona State, but I don't think he hit his peak until after he was out of college. He wrestled with they call it an old timers, but he wrestled with the Winona old timers, and they had some great matches. And even when Rod came over and wrestled with us at Winona High, whenever he wasn't practicing, he would come over just to stay in shape and get a workout and help our kids. But I think he actually hit his peak. He could have gone back probably and wrestled at the college level and been very, very successful 5, 8, 10 years later. As a wrestling coach, Rod was pretty intense at the beginning. As time went on and he gained experience, he relaxed a little and got better and better, just as he was as a wrestler as time went on. There were times when referees would get a little bit irritated with Rod as he was trying to help them out by calling a match for him. Rumor has it that one of the officials finally said, "Coach Hosley, as long as you insist on refereeing the match from the corner, why don't you just go get a whistle and a striped shirt and just go into officiating? At least then you'll get paid for it." So we did. As an official, Rod knew the rules and back inside and out, but sometimes he would catch a little criticism for calling things a little too tight, starting position, clasping, that kind of stuff. But as time went on, he got better and better. After watching him officiate the Winona Invite for many years, as well as many of our home duels, I started to realize that even though we hadn't really noticed a big change because it was over time, he was just getting better and better all the time. We saw him so often, but we realized that he was knowledgeable, hardworking, fair, and consistent, and he wasn't afraid to make the tough call. The last few years, Rod officiated the Clash, Wisconsin State Tournament, as well as many invitational tournaments in this area. Rod, as Spence alluded to, Rod was an outstanding track and field coach at Rushford Pearson, guiding the Trojans to a couple of state championships as well as a true team state title. He also served an assistant after he was done at being a head with the girls track team and helped them to a girls true team state championship and received assistant coach of the year honors. And that says a lot about character when you go from a head coach to an assistant and you're still got the same type of interest and the same type of enthusiasm. That is pretty cool. Rod was also a youth coach for our Winona Park Wrestling program. And it was not only a great coach, but was sort of a cult hero. Whenever there was a practice that Rod was unable to make, there were at least a dozen kids that were wondering what happened to him and where he was. They wanted to know where their favorite coach was that night and when he was coming back. He was not only captivating and entertaining, but really adept at explaining technique at a level the kids could relate to and had little ways to help them remember the fine points of each move. I'm trying to think of something that I can tell you that you might not know about Rod. When my kids were young, we used to visit Rod at his boathouse on some of those warm July days, and he would give them rides on his jet ski. And then he'd do a few tricks. And the one I remember best is the one that he would be going on his jet ski, and then he would climb over and he'd be on the hood and grab the handlebars and do a headstand on the seat while driving, actually kind of going backwards. And both my kids would watch him do that. And with all the boats going across, they were wondering, you know, how does he do that without getting killed? I said, I don't know, but I don't know if he still does that. But that was one of the things that I thought nobody else probably knew that he did that. When it comes to the sport of wrestling, there hasn't been anything that Rodney hasn't done and done well. And it is my honor to introduce the man of the hour, Mr. Rodney Hosley.
Thank you so much, Bill. When I did my last dual meet, 2018 at La Crescent, the AD came out and he said some real nice words about how the number of relationships that you build in wrestling, whether it's relationships with coaches, kids you've officiated, other officials, fans, ADs, table workers. And I've had a great relationship in wrestling with Bill for the longest time. Like you said, we used to come over there and do some scrimmaging. We worked together with Park Rec. We worked together at some camps. I officiated at Winona for a number of years, but it actually goes all the way back to when Bill was in the NAIA National Finals. I didn't know him then, but I was there out of uniform because I didn't get that far, but I was actually there when he was national runner-up. So that was kind of neat. He is certainly a wrestling fixture around Winona. But some of my favorite memories are my wife and I being schooled by Bill and his wife Jill on the badminton court at the Y. So thank you, Bill. I'd also like to thank Spencer and the committee, whoever the committee is that decided I was worthy of getting this honor. I've had relationships with Spencer for the longest time. He actually officiated some of my matches, or at least one when I was in college at Winona State, probably a JV match. So that goes back an awful long ways. I'd also like to congratulate the other inductees. Mike Bringa, what you said about me was really nice, really appreciate it. Kyle Wheaton, I've been around Caledonia wrestling for a long, long time too, and congratulate all of you. I've looked at a lot of the different names that are in this Hall of Fame, and just to have your name on that list is really special. A couple of guys on there, Roy Haig and Donnie Dahl, they were in this Old Timers Wrestling League when we had the Winona team that won the title over Albert Lee and Albert Lee. Roy Haig had one of the greatest comeback matches when he won the state title, whatever year that was. I never forgot that match. And Donnie Dahl, don't pick up his leg. Don't pick it up. You'll be in big trouble. Also real proud to represent Winona in this. There's been some great wrestlers and officials come out of Winona. Kermit Sulky, 3-time state champ and outstanding wrestling official. Joe Hoylman, state champ, national champ. Justin Smith, and most recently, state champ Ryan Henningsen. So to represent Winona is very special to me. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Southern Minnesota Wrestling Officials Association. Getting hooked up with those guys when I got into wrestling officiating is what made me, however good an official I was. Rick Rude, great guy. Bill Olson wrestled at Winona State, and I've refed with him for years. Jerry Reeker, I competed against him as a coach. We competed against each other in college, but at opposite ends of the weight classes. and Joe Morgan, Tom Queasley, Paul Fischbacher, what a wonderful group of guys to work with. Really enjoyed it. Even though I spent half of my time in Wisconsin and half in Minnesota, they really took me under their wing. I think something that's helped me, I think, to be a good official is that I was a wrestler and I was a coach. So and then being an official, I kind of knew a little bit where everybody was coming from. And of course, 28 years of longevity doesn't hurt either. You got to let a few things roll off your back when you're an official. I also had a wonderful opportunity to officiate with some of the greats of all time, or to coach against Leo Simon, Frank Murphy, Mike Mazzatelli, John Rhodes, some of the most classic coaches of the 70s and 80s. And then a little bit later, Dave Schulte and Joel Viss and Bill Simpkins and even Ron Sanders. In fact, Ron gave me one of the biggest compliments that I think I've gotten as an official. He told me that I always protected the wrestlers. And I thought that that's an important thing to do as an official. Not that guys didn't get hurt, because we all know that wrestling is that way, but you wanted to minimize it the best you can. I'd like to also thank my wife, Mary. She's a little different than most other wrestling wives. She was glad when I was gone officiating. That gave her time, her own time at home. So most wives want their husbands home. No, not always. She wanted it the other way. So anyway, thank you all very much. It's been a lot of fun. I learned how to Zoom. And again, to have my name on that list with all these other wonderful officials and coaches and workers, it's just fantastic. And thank you again. I'm out.
Thanks, Rod. Our next honoree, if you'd have told him back in 5th grade, hey, your last high school career match, you're going to go out as a state champion. Your last collegiate match, you're going out as a national champion. Our next athlete to be inducted here is one of the finest athletes to ever come out of Cason-MANTORVILLE High School. Not only won the state championship as a senior, but he also won it as a senior in Minnesota State Mankato for Jimmy McCoskey. And just a tremendous wrestler, Jason Rowe. Could say so much about him, but boy, when it comes to riding as a coach, you had your kids, when we were at Moorhead State, was coaching against them. Look at Jason Rowe and how tough he rides. Nobody rode any tougher than Jason Rowe. And I'm gonna stop there. He's a regional fisheries manager out at Great Falls, Montana. And we'll hear some of the best from his high school coach, Andy Schmalzright. Andy?
All right, thank you, Spencer. Privileged to be here presenting Jason for this award. Before we get into a little bit about him, I just want to thank the committee, the Section 1, environment and support system that is part of what I grew up in. Kind of late in life, not until 8th or 9th grade did I see my first ever high school wrestling match, and it was a Section 1 environment that kind of brought me along. Seeing some of the names on this list that are getting awards here today, including, Chris Steele, Matt Ryan, and others that, created this environment that is kind of pretty special, I think, statewide, having traveled all over the Midwest and seen wrestling happen in a number of environments. It's a bigger deal than you think to provide this environment for the kids. It gives them something to strive for, and certainly helps create their success even beyond their high school days and when they're finished up. Before we get to Jason, just a quick thank you also to Spencer, who puts an unheard of amount of time and resources into supporting the sport, not just for his own sake, but for the success of countless hundreds and probably even thousands of families that he's had an impact on, including my own. Short story about Spencer: when my son was probably in kindergarten, I end up on the phone with Spencer from suburban Chicago, Illinois, and Spencer's trying to sell me a wrestling mat. And I'm like, well, how do you get a wrestling mat from wherever the heck you are in northern Minnesota to here? And he's like, I'm going to throw the dang thing on the back of a trailer and I'm going to bring it to your house. And we're not going to speak another word of it. I'll show up on Thursday. And sure enough, the guy shows up with this mat, and it's the mat that my son used to, create his own successes. And I've passed that on since, but I'll never forget that this guy that I thought was, not crazy, but just, I can't believe he's going to drive all this way and throw this mat on a trailer just to get it to me in suburban Chicago, Illinois, and then have it mean so much to our family moving forward. And one other story besides Spencer is, I see on the list here, Mr. Mike Buringa, which I got to give a lot of thanks for, in a lot of ways being responsible for me being here in support of Jason's nomination. And that one of my first people that I ever knew their name in wrestling was Mike. I went to high school in Wabasha Kellogg, and where a lot of people like really respected but did not like Mike Buringa, just because he was so good as an athlete, so good as a coach and competitor. And it was the biggest deal when our high school finally beat these Plainview-Elgin-Millville guys for the first time in, 15, 20 years. And in a joking sort of way, I spoke with Mike years later that I didn't really understand what the big deal was, why everybody thought you guys were so good. But I learned later that Mike put a lot of hours in, both as an athlete and a competitor, and kind of set the stage for others to succeed as well under his watch. And Mike was one of the guys who gave me my first, bid in coaching at KASSON-MANTORVILLE, which allowed me to then later coach Jason through his high school years. So Mike tutored me along, showed me the way, showed me how it was done. And without those pieces, without those building blocks and steps, you got to look back. Guys like Spence, guys like Mike, even the guys we competed against all those years, they create the environment that means a lot. So moving forward to meeting with Jason when he was probably 8th or 9th grade and starting to take the sport really, really seriously. What sticks out in my mind is a conversation with him where, you're given the end of practice coach speech about what it takes to be not just good, but great, to excel, amongst in an environment where everybody's doing good work. And Jason comes after practice and says, well, what does it take to be good or to be great? What do we got to do? I said, well, you got to do more than everybody else is doing. You got to be willing to put in extra time and give more than everybody else is giving if you want to succeed more than everybody else is succeeding. And it wasn't probably 10 seconds before he turned the tables. He's like, well, does that mean you have to give any more too? or it's just me? And I said, well, that's me too. So if you need something more, we'll do more. And I'll be danged if they go, how about like tomorrow at like 6 a.m. we start this? And what are you gonna say? I guess 6 a.m. tomorrow it is. And you know, that taught me a lot, not to call anybody's bluff, but just, you know, not be careful what you wish for either, but to see a kid willing to ask the right questions, willing to do the things that are gonna make you successful, and to challenge you as a coach and a leader to step up and do the stuff that you need to do to provide the resources and the environment to move forward. So provided an excellent role model for my son's wrestling career, who followed it more than probably Jason will ever know, you know, over the years, just doing the same things. I want to do what he did. I want to follow that example. I want to win in the same way, riding hard on top. And, you know, some of those things were echoed in, you know, in ways that were pretty neat to see the parallels. But without, you know, any further ado, and being thankful to introduce Jason RHOTEN.
Thanks, Andy. Well, first off, congrats to everybody, all the candidates that were inducted, the high school seniors. So congrats to everyone. And thanks for the nomination. Obviously, quite an honor. Very honored, very humbled to be sitting here in front of you tonight. Anytime that you're inducted into a Hall of Fame, it's unique. It offers me, anyways, an opportunity to look back and kind of and to reflect upon my career. You know, at times when you're competing, you forget about everything. You forget about the accolades. You forget about, you know, what you accomplished. You're always thinking about the next thing. How can I train for the next match, the next tournament, whatever it is, and just that never satisfied. So, you know, this is something different. It's different because you actually get to reflect upon it. You look back, you think. I mean, it's been 13 years since I last, you know, competed. And it allows me time to look back and, you know, be very thankful for all the folks that helped contribute. You know, the other thing, I guess, first and foremost, like Andy mentioned, I want to thank those that put the time in to coordinate this event. So Spencer, thank you. Other familiar names, Sydney Nelson, thank you. There's a lot of sports that have volunteers, but in the sport of wrestling, it seems pretty unique where we have people that volunteer, you know, to the next level. So you folks know who you are. And it's really, really important. It's the way that the sport moves forward, and it creates opportunity for folks, you know, such as myself, and it really shapes lives. So it shaped my life. So thanks to all those folks out there that are putting in, you know, all those extra hours, the volunteer hours, donated hours. So, you know, thank you. I also owe a huge thanks to my parents. My parents followed me around. They drugged me around when I was a little guy in youth wrestling, took me to tournaments across southern Minnesota. Very fortunate to have a family that did that. So thanks to my folks for that. Then in high school, you know, they followed around the high school team as well, and into college, you know, traveling across the country, watching wrestling matches, and following the team. So thanks to my folks. You know, my college career, I owe a huge thanks to my wife, Brianna. You know, being in a relationship with me, probably at that point in my life wasn't extremely easy. There's a lot of stress associated with dating an athlete that really prioritized the sport of wrestling above almost everything else. So there's a huge thank you that goes out to her. Additionally, I had a support system through the high school that I was very, very fortunate to have. I had high school friends that followed me around to high school matches. They supported me in ways, you know, the moral support piece of it. So I was very fortunate for that. And then also they followed me all the way through college too. We would wrestle national tournament, and my high school friends would show up. They know the entire team. They would be there cheering on just like everybody else. So it was pretty impressive, and very, very thankful for that and lucky to have that. You know, when I went to Mankato, it was a blessing. I had teammates and friends, and developed a lifelong relationship with you know, my teammates that it's a bond that never be broken. I can call them up at any point in time. So, you know, I fell into a good system. I fell into a room that was very competitive and pushed me to be better, both as a wrestler and then also as a person. It really challenged me just to be a better person. So I'm extremely, extremely fortunate for that. And thanks to all the teammates that that I competed with at Mankato. You know, the coaches, gosh, I have a pile of coaches to thank. So from youth, you know, from youth all the way through my college career, I've been influenced. And sometimes, you know, as a coach, maybe doesn't feel like we influence kids, but, you know, looking back and reflecting upon my career, there's a lot of coaches that had influence on my career starting in as a youth. So, you know, Dean Nelson and Cindy Nelson, obviously Cindy's here tonight, but the Nelsons, Knutsons as a youth, et cetera. There's a lot of folks that are involved in that program that pushed me to be better. You know, going into high school, you know, Coach Bringa spoke earlier. You know, Coach Bringa did have an influence on me. I can remember a match, Lake City tournament. I was in 8th grade. I was an undersized 103 pounder. I just took a beating. I came off the mat. It had been a couple beatings in a row, actually. I came off the mat extremely frustrated. And I said some words out of frustration. And I remember Coach Beringa mentioning, you know, something along the lines, if you talk like that, you're not going to win. So you'll never win if you have that thought process. And it was eye-opening. You know, at that point in time, it wasn't the pity party. He wasn't going to accept the pity party. He wasn't going to accept me just sulking, I guess. And, you know, Coach Beringa made me realize, you know, if you want something, you got to work for it. At that point in time, that's one of the things that I remember from 8th grade. So as we're coaching these student athletes, you know, we do have influence on them. It doesn't always show right away, but, you know, when I look back and reflect, there's been a lot of coaches that influenced me. So when I got to Mankato, obviously, you know, Jim McCoskey, head coach there, had a huge influence on me. You know, as I was, you know, a freshman out of the house in college, he's, you know, acts like a father figure. And I still keep in contact with Jim today. And I'm very fortunate, very thankful for all the time, effort that Jim's put into that program at Mankato. You know, there's a bunch of assistants that also contributed in a lot of different ways for me. So very thankful to all the assistants, too many to mention. Lastly, you know, when I called Spencer, when I was, you know, Spencer notified me this honor, and I was, again, very humbled by it. I asked Spencer on the presenter, you know, who typically presents? And, you know, Spencer said, pick somebody that influenced your career, your life, et cetera. So as soon as he said that, I knew who I should pick. You know, Coach Smallsright, Andy Smallsright, coached me in high school. And, you know, he took a lot of time and put a ton of time, a lot of effort into me personally, developed my skills technically. And then also, you know, one of the big things, I guess I was very fortunate when I got to college was I was mentally ready for the college scene. I guess, you know, stepping onto the mat as a true freshman, I was mentally ready. Yeah, I was lacking technique. I was lacking strength. I was lacking a lot of different areas, but I still was lacking mentally, but I was prepared mentally, you know, the mental toughness piece. I really thank Andy for that. You know, even furthermore, one more thing that needs to be mentioned about Schmalzright is I never would have ended up at Mankato. I had no intentions of going to Mankato. I thought I was probably going to go to NDSU, and I was set. And, you know, it was a few days kind of before I was going to sign. Andy said, hey, you got to go check out Mankato. You got to check it out. And had I not checked it out, I can't imagine, you know, where my life would be at this point in time. You know, the rest is history. I went to Mankato, obviously, but, you know, without Andy giving me that pressure of at least going to visit Mankato, man, I don't know. I wouldn't have a beautiful wife, 4 children, working a job that I think's, you know, a dream job in an awesome location. So these things that we have to choose along the way, we don't know it at the time how they're going to influence the rest of our lives, but I was fortunate enough to have a lot of people that influenced me at certain times, certain critical times, and went a direction that I'm at a point where I'm very, very thankful. So I have a ton of thank yous to hand out, but yeah, very humbled by the honor, and thank you to everyone. If I can find the mute button.
Our next honoree and inductee is in the coaching area this year, and what a job he did. He come into a program that had very few wins. I mean, probably got more wins in one season when he got that program rolling than they'd had 3 or 4 years. I'm not sure, but he really turned that program around in, I think, 12 years or 9 years in a row there at the section finals. Coach Matt Ryan, he won a state championship there, had his team in the finals as well. And he also, like I say, was selected coach of the year. Whole state, that's AAA and AAA. So you know that he just did an outstanding job. His final year, he finished up with his son, Tyler, winning an individual state championship. I think he had 2 other individual state champs that day, too, maybe 3. He got a little greedy at times, you know, but 3 is a crowd, but it's also great wrestling when you turn out that many individual state champions in a year. And we'll have his son, Tyler, introduce his father, the newest member of the 2021 Section Hall of Fame here. Tyler, you ready?
We can't hear you, Tyler.
All right. Is this working now? Okay. Turn yours down then. Were we able to hear Tyler?
No, we weren't.
Oh, we did.
Okay, here we go. All right, round 2 here. I am honored to be here to introduce my dad as he gets inducted into the Region 1 Hall of Fame. Wrestling has always been a big part of his life and the sport that has had a huge impact on my life as well. The amount of time he has dedicated to wrestling from not only coaching, but also competing is surreal. From being a little kid riding the bus to the varsity tournaments with my dad to wrestling in the state finals for the last match he ever coached, I couldn't have dreamt of a better way to grow up with him guiding me as both a coach and more importantly as a father. Over my high school careers, we had countless matches in the living room that would start by just a simple nudge passing by each other in the house and would end with me and my back in the living room. As he got older and I got bigger, the matches started to become much more closer and more competitive. By the end of my sophomore year, I think he started to realize he couldn't just take me down anymore, and the tables really started to turn. After a few short matches of me being the one holding him on his back, he quickly made the decision he was done with matches in the living room, which is probably a wise decision for him. His competitive edge and drive to be the best was prominent in and out of the wrestling room. He's able to transform and motivate athletes to be the best they could on and off the mat. For a good portion of his career, he was also the high school principal. And being the principal, he held all his wrestlers to a much higher standard in the classroom as well. His leadership and ability to motivate athletes is something that I've always looked up to. Congratulations, Dad, you deserve it. Thanks, Tyler. Sorry about our technical issues there, but it looks like we're good to go now. I'd like to thank the rest of my family and friends that are here with me tonight. I'd like to start by thanking Spencer and the Region 1 Hall of Fame Committee for this recognition and for your work in supporting wrestling in Southeastern Minnesota. Congratulations to the other inductees tonight as well. I remember the first time I attended this event as a coach with our seniors and how much I enjoyed the senior banquet and Hall of Fame induction every year. It's a great way to recognize the Southeastern Minnesota senior wrestlers for their commitment to our sport. I feel humbled to be part of the Hall of Fame portion of this event tonight. I'm very appreciative of this opportunity. I talked at the beginning of each season with our wrestlers at KW about how much respect I had for them being part of the program. At KW, we have roughly 60 students per grade level, so around 30 boys per grade. In grades 7 through 12, that would add up to be around 180 boys. We had a successful program with teams and individuals qualifying for the state tournament, and yet we would only have around 30 of those 180 out for wrestling. Why? Why wouldn't everyone want to be a part of it? Because it's hard. Wrestling is hard. But I truly believe the fact that it's hard and that not everyone can do it, that's exactly what makes it great. That's what makes our sport so rewarding. The hard stuff is what helps us all grow in more ways than just learning new wrestling technique, but grow as people. The hard parts are what teach us how to set goals, help us instill an expectation of hard work, prepare us to deal with adversity, and allow us to experience things that without wrestling would not be possible. Congratulations to the seniors who have been through the hard stuff and were recognized tonight. And whether you know it or not yet, because of wrestling, you're now better prepared to deal with some of the things life will throw your way moving forward. When I was hired as a second grade teacher and head wrestling coach in 1998, I really didn't have any idea how long I would be at KW or how the wrestling situation would work out, but I was excited to have the opportunity to take over the program. That excitement turned to some frustration early on. My first year, we were 8-9. I should have enjoyed it more than I did because that season was followed by some challenging years. But there were reasons to be optimistic about the future of the program and potentially getting things turned around. Thanks to the countless hours and incredible commitment from many individuals like Wayne Lexfold, my dad, Rick Ryan, and the many others that helped out with our youth program over the years, we were able to finally have some success at the varsity level. I remember the first time KENYON-WANAMINGO was listed in the lean and mean part of the guillotine rankings, and what a big deal that was. In year 10, which was the 07-08 season, we won the HVL with an 11-0 conference record, won the section and qualified for the state team tournament for the first time in school history. That was our first section finals appearance, which started a streak that I had the opportunity to be part of my last 12 years as a head coach. Nathan Lexfold, the first state champion I had the opportunity to coach and who is now the head coach at KW, has helped continue that streak the last 2 seasons, now with 14 straight section finals appearances and counting for KW wrestling. This sustained excellence with many different teams and individuals experiencing the excitement of competing in a section finals match and state tournament is something we are proud of at KW. I could talk for hours about memories and stories of the good, bad, and everything in between. Over 21 years, there were many ups and downs, from the extremes of grinding through a 1-15 season and a 3-year stretch going 8-45, to the opportunities of 16 trips to the state tournament, including 3 finals appearances and the ultimate team experience of winning a state championship in 2016. And of course, the opportunity to be part of all the individual accomplishments over the years has been pretty special as well. The hug after an individual wins a state title is about as special as it gets. There was a point early in my career where I questioned whether I would ever get that opportunity. I'll never forget when Nathan won his state title, the sense of relief I had that we finally got one and how happy I was for him. It was just awesome. I was fortunate to get that opportunity with 14 individual state titles, moments I will never forget. There are so many people I need to thank who helped and supported me over my time as head coach at KW. The successes we had as a KW wrestling program are the reason I'm here tonight, but there are so many people that have contributed to those successes. There's no way I could name them all, but there are a few that stand out. First, I'd like to thank my family. My ex-wife Molly was very supportive and did so much for our kids and family always, but especially during the wrestling seasons when I was gone so much. My 3 kids, Tyler, Brianna, and Rachel, who are here tonight, had to grow up with a dad who coached and was gone a lot for wrestling, but were always supportive in their own way. I'd like to thank my parents for their support over the years, and especially my dad for his commitment to our youth program, which was a key to the success we had at the varsity level. He was my biggest supporter behind the scenes and someone I knew I could always count on if I needed something. The countless hours he put into our youth program and elementary wrestlers, and just his general support of KW wrestling in so many ways is a big reason my name made this list tonight. I'd like to thank the assistant coaches I worked with over the course of my career. Thanks to my assistant, Chad Olson, who started with me back in our first season, 98-99, and all he's done for the program. I'd like to thank Wayne Lexfold for being the greatest volunteer coach a head coach could ever ask for. Our coaching staff laughed a lot together over the years, and I always appreciated being able to have fun with those guys. Wayne and I were always on the same page, oftentimes saying or yelling the same exact thing at the same exact time from the corner. Well, almost the same exact time. Usually I was about a half a second ahead of Wayne, which we would laugh about too. Thanks, Wayne, for being here tonight and for your support. I'd like to thank all the coaches of the teams we competed against over the years who helped push our team to be as competitive as possible. The HVL conference was a great conference for our team to compete in every year, and I really enjoyed getting to know those coaches over the years. The relationships that were formed with other coaches and officials over the course of my 21 years as a head coach are something I appreciate, will always remember, and though I don't run into those guys as much anymore, will always consider wrestling colleagues and friends. When I was working on this speech for tonight, I started listing all the coaches who I wanted to thank for helping push our program and helping me out along the way. But the list got long and I'd hate to leave anyone out. But I do want to thank Link Steffen, the KWZM battles over the years during the regular season, section tournaments, and even at the state tournament. Well, those matches didn't always go the way I wanted them to, but they were memorable and I loved the rivalry. I want to thank Link for the communication we were able to have over the years behind the scenes, and for his teams helping push our teams to always be better. Finally, and most importantly, I'd like to thank all the wrestlers I had the opportunity to work with for 21 seasons. Their commitment, dedication, and hard work are the reasons I have so many great memories from my time as a head wrestling coach, and the biggest reason I'm part of this program tonight. I knew in my own mind at the beginning of the 18-19 season that it was going to be my last year as head coach at KW, though I didn't make that known to anyone until the end of the season. I think because I knew it was going to be my last, I tried to enjoy everything as much as possible. I can't thank that group of wrestlers enough for making my last year so special. Coaching my last dual meet in the state finals, going 5-0 in the individual medal round at the state tournament, including 3-0 in the finals, with 3 state champs was about as good as it gets. And coaching the very last match of my career in the corner at the XL Center, watching my son Tyler win another state title his senior year, well, I just feel extremely blessed. I know I use the word opportunity often tonight, but that's exactly how I look at my time as a wrestler from elementary school through college, as well as the years I spent as a head coach. The sport of wrestling has defined me as a person in many ways and has been such an important, enjoyable part of my life. I'm thankful for the opportunity I had to coach at KW and to try to give back to the sport that had given so much to me. When I started, I could never have imagined those 21 years turning out the way they did, but I couldn't be more thankful for how it all played out. Thank you again to Spencer and the Region 1 Hall of Fame Committee for this opportunity tonight. Have a great rest of your night, everyone.
Thanks, Matt. Our next honoree is one of Lewiston-ALTURA's greatest wrestlers. Now they're paired with Rushford Peterson. At that time, they were Lewiston-ALTURA there. Tom THEEDE, and of course, Tom was outstanding. He won a 3rd place medal before in his senior year. He went undefeated. And we were warming up right behind him. Our wrestler at Hancock won. He followed him with state title. So I knew when he had Coach Frank Murphy in those chairs that they had the winning chair. So we got to sit in their seats. Could point them out right today in that St. Paul Civic Center, right exactly where Frank Murphy and Gary Mills are sitting that night that Tom won that state title. That's just a memorable moment. There's moments in your life you'll remember, just outstanding people, and you were so happy for it. And at this time, I'm going to present longtime friend and coach Frank Murphy is going to be the presenter for Tom THEEDE. So give him a round of applause.
High school wrestling coach. It is an honor to be asked to be his presenter tonight. To be successful in anything you do, there are certain criteria that are needed. One of those criteria, and a very important one, is family support. It was obvious that Tom had support from his whole family during his high school career. There are 3 people missing this induction tonight that played a large role in Tom's success. And they are looking down from above on us tonight. That would be his dad, Bill, his brother, Terry, and his grandpa, Halloway. State championships are earned through hard work, determination, discipline, and good practice partners. Through Tom's high school career, he met many challenges and successfully conquered those challenges. Without any further ado, it is my privilege to present my friend, Tom THEEDE.
Thank you, Frank. Appreciate that. First of all, I'd like to thank the MCC Region 1 Hall of Fame for inducting me into the Hall of Fame. It's humbling to be included with, the likes of Frank Murphy. The Region 1 area has and will always be, the best area of wrestling and representing the wrestling community. The officials, the wrestlers, the coaches, everyone involved with that. There's so many people that have shaped, my wrestling career. One of them, which is sitting right here to my right. Frank Murphy, thank you for all you've done for myself and all the wrestlers that you have coached. You had a great way of preparing me for my matches, making that match mean everything. So there's a lot of stuff that Frank did for me. And at one point when I was a junior and we were going into the St. Paul Civic Center, and first time I was there, Tad Ellinghausen was with me that year. So we walk out from the tunnel and walk into the arena, and 8 mats laying out there. And for a small farm boy from Lewiston, both Tad and I looked up, and Frank could see the looks on our faces. And we kind of went, oh boy. And Frank, great comeback, goes, you know, don't you think this would hold a lot of hay? And he always had a way of making sure that we felt the best we could, you know, to perform out there. Another time in my wrestling career is state finals. So we are, Frank knew that this was going to be the biggest match of my career, and it was against a guy named Jim Oley. We had seen each other quite a few times. So Frank, knowing how nervous I was, took me and a buddy of mine, Chris Feltz, and we went for a ride over to Stillwater to see an uncle. When we when we got to his uncle's place, we met his uncle, and he asked us if we wanted a beverage. And Frank goes, no. So it was a way of Frank being able to make sure that we, you know, did our best. Took me in a nervous situation and got me to calm down, and we did well. So thank you, Frank. One of the biggest mentors in my wrestling career. Another guy I'd like to thank would be Chuck Seifert. I mean, he took me as a freshman in college, coming off of the state championship, and working me through those moments in time where you think you're really good and you're not. And he kept working with me through that season, and he got me to the national tournament. So I really need to thank Chuck on that for believing in the ability that I had. So Bill and Marianne, they are my parents. They were there for every match. They supported, and they were just my biggest fans. So I'd like to thank them for all the stuff that they put aside and made sure that, here again, Tom was able to do his best at wrestling. My wife, so Katie, she has been there. We've been high school sweethearts. You know, she has been there for 37 years with me. And through those high school years, we all know as high school athletes, you know, during injuries or other things that go on, she had always been there to make sure that I did my best. There's a reoccurring theme here. The things that she did, she started out as an athlete, wrestling supporter. She did the wrestling mom, she did a great job at that to support our sons in wrestling. And now she's a wrestling grandmother and one of the biggest advocates for wrestling and supporting of the wrestling program here in Lewiston-ALTURA. You are incredible. Thank you for sticking with me and helping me through those wrestling years. And, you know, that continues through life, what wrestling has taught us. Thank you to Tad Ellinghausen. Every wrestler needs a very good wrestling partner to kick his butt and have him get to be a better wrestler. He was with me for 3 years there and just made me become a better wrestler. Last but not least, I would like to thank the Lewiston-ALTURA area. A lot of reminiscing tonight with with the people that have stopped in. Very humbled by the support that this community, family, friends has shown my career. I really can't thank people enough for the support over the years. The banners when we were that senior year going to the state tournament, they really support the local athletes here. The parade at the end, just amazing. We've got memorabilia here that is incredible, just to show, what that community has done. Without the community, we've heard it, many times here tonight, that the community is what makes the athlete and what makes the person. So very proud of this area and the people that I have worked with to achieve the goals that I have in sports and in life. I've heard Frank Murphy's name mentioned quite a bit tonight. So that's an incredible tribute to himself to be able to go out there and pass that on to his wrestlers and the community itself. Just very proud to represent Region 1 in the past and to see my children representing, and now the grandchildren. It's in very good hands. The area is rich in wrestling history throughout. So gotta love this sport. It teaches you a lot about life and about persevering and getting things done. So I'd like to thank the Hall of Fame committee. I'd like to thank Frank Murphy, my parents, my wife, and family, community. It's been a great ride, and thank you.
Thanks. Our next honoree, and I know they're circling left out there at the Oaks Club there, because we just got a text message from Big Jim. So our next honoree, I remember Charlie Seifert had a post on Facebook about a couple months ago, who would probably be the greatest high school wrestler to come out. I mean, this is based on high school only, out of our section, out of our region. But I'll tell you, this next honoree from Hayfield High School, and I think when you get done listening to his presenter, Dave Erickson, you'll say, hey, this guy deserves to be right up at the top, or awful doggone close. And I don't know if circling right against Jim instead of circling left would work. But one of the greatest I ever saw in this region, and that's Chris Steele. And we're gonna let his presenter, Dave Erickson, read off some just outstanding stats that are as good as any high school wrestler to ever come out of this part of the state. Thank you.
Okay. All right, my name is Dave Erickson, and I was Chris Steele's wrestling coach during his high school career. Chris wrestled for Hayfield High School from 1988 to 94. During his 7th, 8th, and 9th grade years, Hayfield was a part of Region 1. In 1988-89 season, Chris was a 7th grader, and he wrestled 8 times at 112 pounds. He did not wrestle in the Region 1 tournament. As an 8th grader, Chris was now injured most of that year, and he was able to come back and wrestle at the end of the season at 130 pounds. And he took part in Region 1, where he lost his one match as far as an individual. In 1990-91, Chris was a 9th grader, and he wrestled at 135 and 140 pounds. Chris wrestled in Region 1 at 135 pounds, and the Hayfield team that year faced Zumbrota Mazeppa and lost, as the team lost 31-30. In the team event, Chris won by disqualification, and the individual part, Chris wrestled a New Richland wrestler, and he won that with a pin. Then he faced a Harmony wrestler and he lost 9-3. The next year, Chris Hayfield was put in Region 2. Chris' record in Region 1 as a 7th, 8th, and 9th grade was 23 wins, 15 losses with 15 pins and 4 pins given up. Chris' last 3 years, he won 118 matches and lost 1. This was in the state tournament, and he lost in the semifinals, but he came back to take 3rd place at 160 pounds. His junior and senior year, Chris was unbeaten and was 2-time Minnesota state champ at 160 pounds. Chris' high school career record was 144 wins, with 105 of these wins as pins. He lost three times. They gave up 3 pins, and they were when he was a 7th and 8th grader. And then he had 2 ties. It was interesting at that time you could have that. And one of these ties was to a Dobriota wrestler who was also qualified that year for the state tournament at 160. And the other was a Waseca wrestler who also qualified for the state tournament at 160. Neither of these wrestlers placed in the state tournament, but Chris went on to the 3rd place at 160 pounds. Chris, in his senior year, also wrestled in the team All-Star Classic between Minnesota and Wisconsin. Each state had 2 teams that they faced each other at the end of the year in this so-called state All-Star Classic. Minnesota had the Maroon team, which was made up of mainly senior wrestlers from the metro area, and the Gold team made up of mainly rural school wrestlers. The Wisconsin teams were the red and white. These teams wrestled at River Falls and at Augsburg College. Chris was on the Gold team at 160 pounds, and in his match with the Wisconsin white team, Chris faced a wrestler from Durand, Pepin, Wisconsin, by the name of Chris Hartung. Chris won 14-7. But the interesting part of this story is that Tim Hartung later went on to wrestle for the University of Minnesota Gophers. Tim Hartung was a University of Minnesota wrestler with 3-time Big Ten champion. He was 3-time All-American and 2-time NCAA champion at 197 pounds. Chris also was asked to wrestle in a tournament in Pennsylvania called the Dapper Dan Tournament. This was sponsored by the University of Pittsburgh and a newspaper in Pittsburgh. The tournament was made up of the Penn State All-Stars. These were the top wrestlers in that weight classes from throughout the state of Pennsylvania. And then the other team was called the USA All-Stars, and a committee went and tried to find the best wrestler from the rest of the country to make up the team called the USA. This tournament was started in 1975, and by 1994, Team Pennsylvania had won 13 times. Team USA had won 7 times. Chris was the 5th Minnesota wrestler to compete for Minnesota in this tournament by 1994. The tournament has produced, or did by that time, it produced 176 NCAA champions, 28 Olympic wrestlers. Chris had to face a Penn State wrestler from Carlton McMillan that was in the AAA class and had placed 2nd in 92 and in 93 and was a Pennsylvania state champion in 94. Chris won with a pin in 2 minutes and 26 seconds and was picked as the outstanding wrestler for Team USA. In the tournament, the Dapper Dan committee paid for the travel and the hotel rooms that this wrestler stayed in while they were there. Chris was also involved in wrestling outside of school. He took part in freestyle and Greco from 6th grades to 10th grade. During this time, he won 14 championships. 3 times he was 2nd place, 1 time 3rd place award. In 1992, Chris was in the United States Cadet World Team in Greco, and he placed 4th at the 167 pounds in Turkey. In 1994, at the U.S. World Team Trials in Colorado, Chris placed 3rd at 163 pounds. Chris' overall record in Greco was 68 wins and 7 losses. In freestyle, he had 79 wins and 9 losses. Chris did receive a scholarship to attend the University of Nebraska, and he competed for 2 years, redshirted his first year, and injured his shoulder his second year, ending his college career. Chris was also contributed in other ways to help the Hayfield wrestling program. He would come in and practice with our bigger wrestlers, and in 2004, when Hayfield was in need of a wrestling coach, Chris stepped up and filled that position for 4 years. Chris was farming at this time, and he had to kind of work his schedule so it would work in. He was not in the system, and this, so far as the staff, and so he had to work around that. In 2008, Mark Voice came back to coach the wrestling team, and Chris continued to help as much as he could. Chris has been a big part of Hayfield wrestling, and it gives me great pleasure to recommend Chris Steele for the Region 1 Hall of Fame. Thank you.
So I just want to say thank you, Dave. We're celebrating because we're out at the Oaks. I want to give a big shout out. Our basketball team just won a state championship today. So yeah, it's an honor to be inducted with everybody. I want to get a shout out to definitely Brad Fisher. Brad was a part of our program, and fun to have around. Matt, good friends with you. Remember the days. It's been a long time. Want to thank Coach Terry Carlson, Coach Mark Voice, who can't be here tonight, and definitely Dave. But what made me would be my teammates. Great teammates make great wrestlers. So we had a room full of guys that never got the opportunity to be in state that probably could have won state championships. So without that setup, it doesn't make us who we are. So, and that still happens today in our small community. And it's an honor to be inducted to the Hall of Fame, and I appreciate it. And I'm honored, and congrats to all were inducted. Thank you.
I might add just a little bit on the Chris Steele induction. He's going into the Minnesota Dave Bartelma Wrestling Coaches Association Hall of Fame on the 1st of May. So, and another note, he lost a real close match in those Grecos to Joe Williams by about a point. You guys know how good Joe Williams was. He's one of the top Greco freestyle wrestlers in the nation. And he did well in college, even though we'll forgive him for being from the Hawkeye stage, you know. So, but Chris is a great one. We look forward to his next induction in the next hall here on May 1st. Okay, our last but not least honoree here, as far as importance, as we all know, assistant coaches. It's like Ed Perkinstead always said at Caledonia, head coach is only as strong as his assistant. And boy, they've had a good one down at Caledonia over the years. He run the Houston program, the youth program, and all that for 25 years. And then for a dozen or 15 years, he was assistant at Caledonia under Jay Tollefson and Dan Gorgon. And he's probably me, and I don't want to take a lot of Tanner's quotes here, but he was the glue that held those teams and programs together down there. He was the heart and soul of the Houston program that has contributed to a great pairing with Caledonia. This time we'll have one of his youth wrestlers he brought up from knee-high to a grasshopper and had him as a high school coach. Tanner Benson will present our last honoree, the assistant coach, Jay Wheaton, for 2021 Region Male Civic Center Region 1 Wrestling Hall of Fame.
All right, thanks, Vince. First off, I'd like to thank the Region 1 Hall of Fame committee for putting this on again this year, and the induction of Jay Wheaton into this year's Hall of Fame class. I was very honored when Wheaty asked me to be the one to introduce him for the ceremony. Jay has been a staple, like Spence said, of the Houston and Caledonia wrestling programs for over 25 years. He was an elite high school wrestler with 114 career wins for Houston High School. 1999, that's when Houston began their co-op with Caledonia High School. Jay was just out of college then and took on the role as the assistant coach, being the representative for Houston. Jay played a very critical role in creating a strong relationship between both the Houston and Caledonia wrestling programs, which continues today. Jay coached for Caledonia Houston until 2009. At that time, he stepped away from his duties as full-time coach to focus on his busy work schedule. He passed the reins as the Houston coach over to Owen Fitzgerald, who was a 2009 graduate of Houston High School. In October that next year, Owen tragically passed away due to a car accident. With the wrestling season with only a month away, Jay came back into the wrestling program, only a year out of it. He had coached for 2 more seasons after that. His first one back was my senior year, and then one year after that. In 2012, a year after I graduated, Jay contacted me about stepping away again and asked me to take over that role as the Houston representative for the program. I'm looking back at it now, I'm very fortunate he was able to convince me to do that. It's been a great experience for me. Like many wrestlers who have come through the Caledonia Houston wrestling program, I'm very fortunate to have been coached by Jay. He was truly the ultimate player's coach. Even though he stepped away from the high school program in 2012, I haven't let him get too far. He's been an incredible mentor for me as a coach and a person. There's been many phone calls after meets and practices just to talk about wrestling and get coaching advice, essentially. Since he stepped away, he's been spending his time running the Houston youth program every year. And so, I mean, it's been over 25 years he's been involved with this program, and I think it's just going to keep continuing that way. I've been attending this banquet since I was a senior in high school, 2011. I 1 year out, and I've been an assistant coach for 9 years. So I've been here for the majority of those 10 years and seen I've been very fortunate to see a lot of the area's most well-respected wrestlers and contributors to the sports, coaches, officials be inducted into this Hall of Fame. So it is truly my honor to introduce Jay Wheaton as the newest member of the Region 1 Hall of Fame. Congrats, Wheatie.
Thanks, Tanner. That was nice. And I got to thank Tanner too for not getting a speeding ticket on the way here. He was at the Caledonia State Finals basketball game this afternoon, and he made it here with just a couple minutes to spare to help me out here. So that's great. And I need to thank all my supporters that are here at my house. Tanner and I are upstairs, but my basement is full of people at the moment. So. And I fully understand the pressure of being the last speaker of the night, so I promise I will do my best to keep this brief. I'd like to start things out by sincerely thanking the selection committee for this honor. Wrestling has taught me so much and given me so many opportunities to meet great people. I feel very fortunate that I was able to give some of that back through coaching. Looking back, I was pretty lucky during my coaching career. As Tanner mentioned, I came up through the program in Houston. I wrestled for Houston all the way from 2nd grade through senior year. And I had some great role models and mentors in my Houston days. I was either teammates or got coached by, all the Erkey boys, the Knutson boys, and all the Craig boys. So I had great role models there. Earlier, Mike had mentioned that, some of his favorite people would be Bill Schultz and John Buchanan. And I kind of laughed because they were very important in my molding as a wrestler as well. Bill Schultz was my junior high coach in 7th and 8th grade. And John Buchanan happened to be Craig Erkey's college roommate. So he would come home from Winona State with Craig and work out with me when I was in high school. So those were two big influences in my upbringing too. And then when I graduated from college, I went to Caledonia, and that was actually pretty easy for being a coach there. I mean, when you walk into the wrestling room in Caledonia, and most of the kids there are like 5th generation wrestlers, and they know more about wrestling in 7th grade than I ever know. So it was pretty easy, and the parents up there were very supportive of, you know, what our goals were and what we were trying to do. So it was a good fit when we merged the two programs. I think that was a great decision for everybody. I also need to give my brother Kyle a lot of credit for any and all the wrestling success that I've had. He was my practice partner all through school, elementary school on. And when I first got into coaching, he had just finished up at Augsburg. So he was a great resource for us as a young coaching staff when we needed any advice with training or technique, or we needed a clinician for wrestling camp. So I got to give him a lot of credit. One thing that I always thought was special about Region 1 is that there's so many great coaches to learn from. I really tried to take advantage of that. And what I was able to learn about being an assistant coach is that the really good ones figured out that what each wrestler needs to do, to what role you need to take for that wrestler to help them be successful. Sometimes that does mean showing technique or being a practice partner when they need a practice partner. But for me, most of that time was actually being a big brother or a tutor, a dietitian, their guidance counselor, or just a ride home from practice. My best memories from coaching will always be the athletes and the athletes that we helped overcome adversity, and watching our wrestlers and managers grow up in the wrestling room to see the great lessons that they learned and the great people that they came to be, through wrestling, and how, we were able to be a part of that. And just to wrap this up, I just want to say a couple thank yous. I need to thank my parents, obviously. They held us to wrestling tournaments from day one on, and I honestly don't think my parents ever missed one of my wrestling matches. So gotta thank them. My brother Kyle obviously was a huge part of my wrestling career and my coaching career. Jim Jory and Dave Olson were my youth wrestling coaches. Todd Lundberg and Brian Mayhus were my high school coaches, great influences on me through my high school days. And then when I went to Caledonia and started coaching, we had some really great people on staff, and we really gelled, and everybody found their role. And I think we did some really good things there. Right? So I want to thank Tony Lang, Al Schmitz, Jeff Windjam, and several others. And finally, I need to thank Spencer Yo. I think, as everybody will say, Spencer is a part of wrestling in Minnesota, and especially in Southeast Minnesota. And when you're a small town kid from Houston, you know who Spencer Yo is probably before if you wrestle, you know about Spencer Yo before you know anybody else. So, and we grew up going to Spencer's camps. So obviously he was a big part of my wrestling background too. So with that, I'd like to say thank you and congratulate all the nominees, and best wishes for your future.
I want to thank everybody for attending this year's banquet. And I want to just so you know, the Minnesota Wrestling Duels Committee, we help out. Of course, this year was different, but we would help out with the Gophers, the Christmas tournament every year. We put on the Clash tournament. We do scholarships like we talked about a little earlier this evening. And we also help wrestlers get refunded for their camps and tournaments they go to. So reach out to us. It's all on our website. And of course, we do this banquet. One other individual I forgot to mention was Glenn Meager from Owatonna. He's also on our committee. And I would invite anybody that's got a few spare moments with their life in wrestling, if you want to join this committee, we're always looking for new individuals to help us with those projects that I just listed. This has also been recorded, so it will be on our website. Brian will be on our website in the guillotine, or just the website? Okay, Brian will put links to it also, but it'll be on our website. And I think Spence wants to come up to have some final notes here, and then we'll conclude.
Yes, thanks and congratulations to all the night presenters. Did an outstanding job as well. And, you know, if you ever got, I mean, it was mentioned by one of the honorees that he thought somebody should be in the hall. So if you've got any suggestions, you could email one of our 7 members on our committee. And I'd like to thank them, obviously, for the great job they do. But before that, I would encourage all 9 of you honorees, and, you know, let's hope for the best, pray for the best, and, you know, maybe we can have a live banquet next year. And if any one of you 9 honorees come back, I'll pick up your meal tab that night. Yeah, although I'm gonna make Mike Buringa pick up the tip because he was trying to roast me, you know, and that, but otherwise, yeah, love to see. But what I'd like to do, if you guys could send me a picture, just a regular photo, you know, face shirt or whatever there, you know, not out on the beach or anything, you know. But what we'd love to do is put together a collage of you 9 individuals and have it on the back of our program like we did all year. I want to mention the members of this committee now and then closing, and if it wouldn't be for those people, I wouldn't be standing up here. They're the greatest committee that I've ever worked with and been on a number of committees. Of course, I won't get into the school committees that I served on over the years. But anyway, this is the very best of the very best. Chuck Seifert, Rick Teese, Al Seahawk, Frank Murphy, Jim Richardson, Scott Davis, and yours truly, Spencer Yo. And good evening and drive safe.
Thank you.
Well, guys.
So somebody wants a picture of Mike Buringa there on the screen too. So I think he's got to weigh in tonight too, doesn't he?
All right, thanks, everybody. I'm gonna go ahead and close it down. Enjoy the rest of your nights.